Welcome, one and all, to the K.O.E. Nation, folks. How are we doing this evening for this very fine Friday evening? It is fine for us here in the United States and the US of A, but for many folks around this glorious globe, there have been better days, but folks, we're going to pray for them all. But folks, I am your King of Extreme, Phil, K.O.E., the man of the hour, the man with the power, the man that makes the other podcast, Coward, the prince and potentate of the political parlance. One handsome man, if I do say so myself. And we are here to discuss and dissect Israel and Iran. What's going on? Where do we go from here? I've sent the invite out to all the buddies. We'll see who actually makes it tonight. But folks, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the Israel-Iran conflict, riots in America, and all the varying things that are happening in America right now. Folks, this is a momentous, a day that will live in infamy, whether we like it or not. This is when Israel, let's just call it what it is. It was a preemptive strike against Iran. Okay, that, like, we can say what we think of it or whatever, but this was a preemptive strike. Now we've got guess who farted? This guy. They just breached the barricades in front of the Capitol building. So will Doghouse call it an insurrection now? Which Capitol building? I'm not following that one at all. What now? Wait, what? Are we talking about the California Capitol building? Goodness gracious, folks, we are. What? He says U.S. just happened. I'm gonna look that up. I mean. Oh boy. Let's see. Several detained following veteran protest on Capitol Hill. Okay. What we have thus far. This is according to WIJA, an ABC News affiliate. What it says here, and this is, well, I'll put the article up on the screen because, we've got such glorious, amazing fans here that are keeping you up to speed. And also, we don't need to put the stream start soon because the stream has started. You are here. You are here, folks. That was the wife of Extreme, the queen of Extreme, if you will, upstairs with, I don't know what that was. Oh, she's okay. She's okay. But folks, let's get right into this article here from this ABC affiliate out of DC, it looks like. Let's see here. 60 people detained following anti-ICE veteran protest on Capitol Hill, 1 injured. Okay, this is from 2 hours ago. Several people who appeared... Oh, let's actually give you some visual confirmation of what we're talking about there. Oh, and of course they give you an ad. First thing you get is an ad, of course. Several people who appeared to take part in a protest held by veterans were detained on U.S. Capitol grounds after entering a barrier and running towards the steps of the U.S. Capitol building. News 7 photographer captured the moment. Roughly 60 people entered through an opening in the barrier towards the steps of the Capitol shortly before 7 p.m. The group had just concluded a protest in front of the Supreme Court building and were preparing to take photos near the Capitol building when the incident occurred. Just moments before, the group had called for Congress and Trump administration to stop deploying military forces against recent anti-ICE related protesters. They also criticized the Army's 250th birthday parade set for Saturday. The group also criticized recent cuts to Veterans Affairs program. Many of those detained wore shirts that read "Veterans Against Fascism." The U.S. Capitol Police said they were aware of the veterans protest, which involved roughly 75 people. Boy, they are doing all they can on ABC to just downplay this as just a little old thing, ain't they? Now, let's see here what we got here. They're surely going to show you.
PureScore 2.0 introduces an updated and enhanced.
Of course, they're going to make you look at some awful ad, but... Okay, so yeah, they're literally bum rushing the Capitol steps. What? They're just bum rushing the steps. Okay. I mean, I said on Twitter just a few days ago that the left is going to sorely regret expanding the definition of insurrection as much as they did. And this is going to definitely serve as an example of it, where now, I mean, they were the ones who kind of opened this Pandora's box. I don't think they're going to like where it goes from here. But yeah, folks, don't bum rush barricaded buildings. Like, I shouldn't have to say that to adults, but unfortunately here we are in this year of our Lord 2025. But yeah, it just happened, DC, and it is an interesting question. Will the folks on the left who were so against what happened a few years ago and literally changed the definition of insurrection to try to make it fit, let's be frank, guess who? We both know that they're going to have some sort of, intellectualize. They'll be able to intellectualize it away. Okay. In their minds, they'll be able to just intellectualize. Well, this is just different somehow. So let's see. Guess who says this weekend the pro Hamas, anti Israel, anti ICE bunch won't know what flag to wave. Will be the PLO flag, Hamas, or Mexican flag. They won't know what to do. Oh, that is, to quote Metallica, sad but true. The far left, they don't know what flag they're supposed to wave, but it's any one of them but America, which, boy, I don't think they realize how much damage that did. I mean, like, these last riots more or less handed Trump and the Republicans the midterms. I mean, like, it would take a tremendous event between now and then for them to not take the midterms. And then with everything else that's been going on, this is going to be a very tough couple election years for Democrats. Now, I'm just curious. I'm going to see if, let's see. Okay, we got folks that are saying white smoke spotted rising above Tel Aviv indicates. Oh God, never mind. That was a meme that I'm not even going to read that one online. Let's see. A buddy of mine saying, "Oh yeah, a reminder that Iran tried to kill the president of the United States." Like, I don't like where we're going with that, where we're trying to find justifications for it. We don't want war. Okay. No American troops on the ground in Iran, as far as I'm concerned. There's no need, no justification for it. And to be frank, we should not have American troops on the ground for this Iran Israel conflict. Just as we shouldn't have any troops on the ground for the Ukraine conflict, even though unfortunately we do. Like, it's mostly special forces and that kind of stuff. And they say, well, it's just for training and just guarding embassies and stuff. But they had to lie about them not being there. And then when they got found out, they had to make up new lies. I mean, that's really what happened. But yeah, to me, no American troops on the ground for either of these conflicts, as far as I'm concerned. There's no reason for us to sacrifice any blood for these. And this is between Israel and Iran and Russia and Ukraine. Okay. Like, this, it's between them. There will be a winner, there will be a loser. And some people say, well, what about, you're just saying they should surrender? There's a difference between surrender and recognition. Okay. Always remember that. So unfortunately, we find ourselves in a place where, internationally speaking, all our options are bad ones. And so to me, if you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, this is one where I think you'd be better to be damned if you didn't. Okay. Like, it's, you didn't do the bad thing that led to the horrible thing. And so I really don't want any further U.S. involvement in this conflict. The people who are trying to call upon more involvement, I'm very skeptical of, because I want peace. Now, keep in mind, in Iran, there's 1 million Christians. In Israel, there's a lot of Christians. So our people are going to be getting bombed. Okay. Our fellow Christians will be facing the full might of the military industrial complex, despite them not very much not being a part of this conflict. Now, I'm going to be making a couple of readings tonight, and it's to remind us, folks, just to remind. This is a reading from the book of Revelations. Revelation 12. And a great sign appeared in heaven, and a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 7 diadems. His tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God to his throne, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even unto death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil have come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. And when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of the great eagle, so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to the place where she is to be nourished for a time and times and half a time. The serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, to sweep her away with a flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. Then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea. Thus ends the reading of God's holy word. And how are we doing, Bandit? Welcome, Bandit. I do hope to see you this evening. I hope if you do come in, we'd love to talk. If you got your feeties up, I totally understand it. But I'm curious. This is a 2-parter. I want to know, what are your thoughts, truly your thoughts, as a Trump voter about this Israel-Iran conflict? I also want to know your thoughts on the riots in America as of late. The two disparate conflicts, two disparate conversations, and I'm curious your thoughts on both of them. Just got back from North Carolina. All righty. So how is North Carolina? Gotta ask, how is North Carolina? And I gotta see, how am I coming through for you beautiful people? I'm coming through beautifully and perfectly for you people. This is necessary. This is necessary and good. But I am curious how North Carolina did treat you this evening, sir. But yeah, I'm curious about your thoughts, especially because, Bandit, I do appreciate your thoughts on these things, but specifically about the riots and the Israel-Iran conflict. And folks, bring it. Come on. This is your place to actually let your thoughts be known. Okay. Yep, drinking some Dr. Pepper. Yep. Now I'm going to do something, see if I can't get a few folks to show up. Um, sometimes you gotta put a little extra bait on the hook. Um, that'll get some folks showing up. But yeah, I'm hoping some folks get here. But if not, we've got some things that we can review because I've talked about Israel in the past, and I'm curious how much my analysis has held up. Bandit goes, as a Trump supporter, I don't like his response to Iran. They're placing the blame for one of the assassinations on Iran. Yeah, like that's a little much. Now, here's the thing, Bandit, not the big public ones that we know about, but like, yeah, Iran's probably, like, if you made me bet, they've probably tried at least a dozen times to assassinate US presidents. So that doesn't really shock me all that much. But I don't like how cavalier some folks within the White House are being about this. They're uh, like, there's some folks that are just giddy with the fact that there's war that they get to finally do. They're so happy that war is finally coming down the pike. And I like, no, we voted for peace. And Tony's been very, very cynical about Trump lately. And whether we like it or not, Trump's our only hope. We don't have to like it, but if Harris was in office and this happened, and oh, trust me, this would definitely happen under any Democrat because they already know. If this would have happened under Harris, rather than, hey, maybe Trump can stop this, would be like, well, Harris is about to send basically both sides another $60 billion a piece. Because unfortunately, kind of like in keeping with what Guess Who Farted said, like on the Republican side, you've got a lot of people who are very, very much Israel firsters. And on the Democrat side, you've got folks who can't figure out if they're Israel first, Hamas first, or Mexico first. Okay. And that's the Democrats. So they can't even figure out where they're supposed to be at the moment. But they're certainly not representing the American voter. And unfortunately, on the Republican side, there's far too many of them as well who I'm not sure who their constituency is, but it sure seems to not be their voters. Now, when people say, like, oh, yeah, but we got a couple of based ones like Massey. Okay. Massey's been in Congress since 2012. All right, Massey fans, name his accomplishments that don't involve things he said on Twitter. Exactly. That's that's my big problem with Massey is he's trying to get the reputation of Dr. No, but at the same time, it's not coming off the same way. It just isn't. But no, Bandit, I appreciate your take on that. Now, in terms of the riots, that one's going to be a tough one. For the Democrats, that is. I mean, it basically gave Trump all the cover he needs. The midterms are basically the Republicans to lose at this point. I could see very easily, before this, what's funny is the minute a Republican wins any kind of election, immediately people, well, the Democrats will take the next election. Surely they'll take the next election. It's just always kind of this assumption that's made that doesn't always pan out, but it's always kind of funny. But this one, I think they see that it's going to be pretty brutal for the Democrats for at least the next few cycles. Because like on election night, it was kind of funny to watch. Like it was the tier of cope where it went from, well, okay, Trump might win to, okay, Trump won the electoral college, but he's never going to win the popular vote. And then you could just see the spirit get drained out of so many lefties. Like just the life was drained out of them when Trump won the popular vote. And I was like, oh, whoops. Oh, that hurts. That hurts. Because to the Democrats, the popular vote is sort of their proverbial mandate from heaven. Okay, that to them, like, if you can get the popular vote, then clearly, like, you are just the one to win. And when Trump took that, I don't know, like, it's going to be at least 2-3 election cycles before the left has any pride again. See, Bandit goes, the pro-Israel, Israel first crowd are the same Republicans that slapped a Ukrainian flag on their truck just because they hate commies in Russia. Commies, even though that was 34 years ago. Yes, but I do think that Cold War psychology is still very much playing into what's happening now, Bandit, in that I think regardless of where the line ultimately is drawn in Ukraine, the point is that there's going to be a wall somewhere that we have to play political hopscotch around for the next 40 years. Okay, like that's the point. Because as far as the Russians are concerned, that's the West being contained. Does that make sense? And I've been saying this since the day Russia invaded Ukraine, because it seemed just the most obvious psychology as to why they're doing this. And so far, my analysis is borne out. Now, we'll see. Ultimately, the war's not over yet, so that will be borne out in its due time. Now, we're in this really messed up point in our politics where what's going to happen now is Beta goes, also there's a tie between the Israeli wars and the Cold War and World War II, to be frank, very heavily World War II. But we're in this very messed up point in our politics where what's going to happen is each side is going to have its war that they think is just, and that they like the Democrats will be like, no, don't fund the Israel-Iran war, fund the Ukraine war. And the Republicans will be like, no, don't fund the Ukraine war, fund the Israel-Iran war. And meanwhile, folks, most of us are like, dudes, we voted for you to not do war. That was the whole point. That was why we hired you. And yet here we are. Here we are. So we have this very weird spot where the peaceniks don't really have any representative, and the last one we have is Trump. So it's literally a help us, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're our only hope kind of situation with Donald Trump. He's our only hope at this point. He's the closest thing we've had to a peacenik in the office in the history of our nation. And I say that with zero hyperbole. Name me an actual peacenik president. Name me one. Yeah. Can't do it, can you? It's so, yeah, we need Trump to hold that line. I really hope he doesn't get swayed by the military industrial complex, because it's so easy to do. It's so easy to get caught up in the pomp and the circumstance and, oh, sir, and think of the troops and think of all the, yeah, it's like a part of me thought about starting tonight's stream with the way that 300, the movie 300, its sequel, where it has Xerxes go out for glory, for honor, war. Like that, you have to resist that. Okay, as a leader, you have to know when to resist that. The dogs of war always want to be let off the leash. They will always howl for any excuse to be let off the leash. You, as a leader, your job is to keep them on the leash. That's the whole job. And you need to know when to seek peace when your dogs of war and your generals are desperate for war. And you need to know when to, and this is the unfortunate reality of being a sovereign, you need to know when to push for war when everyone is crying peace. You need to know that difference. That is what makes a true blessing of a sovereign. If the sovereign that is before our nation, knows truly when that time is, knows when there is a time for peace, knows when there is a time to fight, and knows that difference. That is one of the greatest blessings a kingdom can possibly have. That is one of the greatest blessings an empire can ever have befall it. And whether we like it or not, whether we want to admit it or not, we currently sit at the peak of the American empire. Okay, you and me and everybody within the sound of my voice that you have a phone or a computer to listen, you sit at the peak of the American empire. Now, Steve just asked, do you have a link to the stream? Yes, I just gave it to you. It's up there. Hop on in. I'm gonna bump that message just so there's no ambiguity. But yes, I hope some folks come on. But now, Bandit says, what I'm getting at is Israel was firmly seen as tied to the U.S., even though they had periods when they embraced communist policies. And if you look at the belligerents in the Yom Kippur War, etc., Israel's enemies in those wars got backing by the USSR. I see what you mean now. Yeah, so Israel and Russia have never been big friends, and Iran is basically sort of like Russia and China's gas tank, for lack of better terms. Like when they know they can't get no gas anywhere else, they know they can get some from Iran. And same with North Korea. Basically, anybody that doesn't want to play ball with the Western hegemony, that's how that one works. Okay, good to know. Because we're going to go over here in a little bit my take on Israel-Palestine about a year ago. This is shortly after the October 7th attack. And I'm curious to see how much of what I said is going to hold up over time. So that's something that I'm a little curious about. But folks, these are not good. This is not good news. Okay. We don't want these things to happen, folks. The future is now much more uncertain. Ugh. Excuse me. Outcomes are very, very uncertain. Outcomes are frail. As I like to say, the future's uncertain. Outcomes are frail. Dr. Pepper. It's an eternal battle. Not really a battle, but just kind of a discussion my wife and I have. She's a Dr. Pepper family. I was raised in a Coca-Cola family. Yeah. It's a serious issue of debate between the two of us. But before we move on to anything else, there's something I want to read here. But first, one moment. Woo! All right. Now, some were saying that there's a little bit of potential parallel, but we'll see what you think. This is the book of Revelations, chapter 16. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple telling the seven angels, "Go and pour out on the earth the seven bowls of the wrath of God." So the first angel went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and harmful and painful sores came upon the people who bore the mark of the beast and worshipped its image. The second angel poured out its bowl into the sea, and it became like the blood of a corpse, and every living thing died that was in the sea. The third angel poured out its bowl into the rivers and the springs of water, and they became blood. And I heard the angel in charge of the water say, "Just as you, O Holy One, who is and who was, for you brought these judgments, for they have shed the blood of the saints and prophets, and you have given them blood to drink. It is what they deserve." And I heard the altar saying, "Yes, Lord God the Almighty, true and just are your judgments." The fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and it was allowed to scorch people with fire. They were scorched by the fierce heat, and they cursed the name of God who had power over these plagues. They did not repent and give him glory. The fifth angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and its kingdom was plunged into darkness. People gnawed their tongues in anguish and cursed the God of heaven for their pain and sores. They did not repent for their deeds. The sixth angel poured his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. And I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits like frogs, for they are demonic spirits, performing signs, who go abroad to the kings of the world to assemble them for battle on the great day of God the Almighty. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake, keeping his garments on, that he may not go about naked and be seen exposed. And they assembled them at the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon. The seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple from the throne, saying, "It is done." And there was a flashing of lights, rumbling. Oh, no, I got that one wrong, actually. My bad. And there were flashes of lightning, rumbling peals of thunder, and a great earthquake, such as there had never been seen since man was on the earth. So great was that earthquake. The great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And God remembered Babylon the Great to make her drain the cup of wine of the fury of his wrath. And every island fled away, and no mountains were to be found. And the great hailstones, about 100 pounds each, fell from heaven on people. And they cursed God for the plague of the hail, because the plague was so severe. Thus ends the reading of God's holy word. And the seas boiled and the skies fell. Yes. Now, I'm not saying that this is the end times, folks. Okay. There's a chance that this conflict can be resolved. But, folks, you always got to be worried whenever there's a new war that arises, because like in Revelations 12, war was here before humanity ever was. War existed before humanity, and it merely waited for humanity to arrive to practice it. War existed before us. The dragon, Satan, the devil, he waged war against God, our creator. And Satan, as we know, is the king of this world. The Lord is the king of all, but Satan rules the world and the worldly. And so that's why war is the truest expression of the worldly. And so that's why we as Christians must always oppose war on principle, because it's literally the worst instincts and impulses of us allowed to run rampant on the soft hides of the innocent. And so that's why I believe that as a Christian, we should always seek peace, because Satan is the one who wages war. And he is the one who rejoices at this war. I tell you, folks, hell rejoices with every war that rings out. So keep that in mind and remember that when asked what you support. Now, folks, I'm actually a little curious. I have not watched this video in some time. Let's see. It was 1 year ago, April 29th, 2024. The truth about Israel and Palestine and the only solution to it revealed. And I believe this will still hold up quite well. Now, I want to know what your thoughts are, folks. So let me know. Do you think I'm full of it? Do you think I hit it out of the park? Let me know. Without further ado, Let's rock and roll on this. You have arrived at the K.O.E. Nation. So, folks, welcome as we are in these truly historic times. Truly, these are moments that could very well be the end of human history. That is true. That is very, very true. I don't like using apocalyptic language like that, but it is quite possible. Like, we all have to acknowledge that we are closer to the precipice than we've been in a very, very long time. The war in Gaza has truly moved to another level. This was something that my dad helped lead me to this conclusion when we were discussing earlier, like literally about an hour ago. And I was like, yeah, I kind of gotta open the show with this. I gotta tell people this is a thing. Where it stands right now with the Israel-Palestine conflict, I want you to hear what I'm saying here. I want you to really process exactly and precisely what it is I'm saying here. As we stand today, 2023, this year of our Lord, we now, as it stands, there is more catalysts to spark a wider conflict than there are catalysts to de-escalate. I want you to hear exactly what I'm saying. We right now have more ways to wind up in World War III, to wind up in a much wider conflict, than we have ways to de-escalate our current conflict. Do you realize the precipice we are all on? Okay, that's why for years I have rallied and been so anti-war for all of these years, because this is the logical conclusion to it all. When people simply cannot learn to forgive, this is what the conclusion is always going to be. Now, the unfortunate reality of it is at the end of every war, no matter how much both sides hate each other, at the end of it, a couple of people get together in a room and talk it out. And then they figure out what they do from there. That's all war. That's every war. And that will be the eventual conclusion of these wars if it does not lead to an escalation the likes of which that cannot be clawed back from. And I'm afraid we're getting there. We are fast approaching. You also need to keep in mind, like, when you say, well, what do you mean? There could be a very real possibility of Arab nations supplying weapons and even troops to the Palestinian side of the conflict. You understand what kind of position that leaves Israel? Because they've said this for years. I have a cousin, two cousins who lived in Israel for years. And one of the cousins, we talked very intimately about the conflict. The other cousin, very, very nice person. She gave a very different perspective on it, which was very enriching. But my other cousin, we talked deep about it. And the thing that a lot of folks in Israel have been worried about is like, well, we're surrounded by Arab nations that are hostile to us on all sides. And for years, that was something that was just kind of hand waved off by the West. That's a real possibility, folks. That thing that was just sort of hand waved off is now a variable in the algebra equation we have to consider. And so I pray for peace. I pray for peace, knowing that it's probably not going to come. I'm going to pray for it anyways, because we know no matter what side you take, and sides is such a stupid way of putting it, whatever side you take in this, like I'm on the side of humanity, but this is about to get dark. Things are about to get darker than we've known in this entire century. And this century has been bathed in war adventurism blood. And I fear we haven't even seen the peeled the beginning surfaces of it, which is terrifying. So, folks, I'm wondering what you think out there. Where will this wind up? Now, the unfortunate reality of it is, and we all know this is true, there will be no peace in the Middle East. There will be no peace in Israel, Palestine, whoever the Israelis, the Palestinians, there will be no peace at all until everyone acknowledges Jesus is Lord, until everyone there acknowledges that Jesus is Lord, the only Son of God. He was crucified and died for our sins. There will be no peace because only Jesus grants peace. And so I pray for the least amount of death and suffering possible, knowing that ultimately, while the sides are what they are in this conflict, there will be no peace. I pray that that changes, but ultimately, this is one of those conflicts that seems irretractable, which is so unfortunate because I've always held there's no such thing as a timeless enemy. We're all humans, we're all peoples with families and loved ones and aspirations and ideas and hopes for the future. And so surely there has to be a way. There was a time when the Americans and the Soviets were timeless enemies. They would never be friends. Then after the collapse, there was a time. That time has faded, but there was a time. And I pray for the day when even the conflict like this, these timeless enemies are now allies again. The unfortunate reality is the only way that that will happen is when everyone in this conflict accepts Jesus Christ as Lord, as Savior, as God above all. That will be when it happens. Until then, I pray for the safety of as many human beings as possible, because in the last 2 years, and especially the last 2 weeks, we have heard so many people scream havoc to let slip the dogs of war. And the devastation on our species, I fear, may be immeasurable. It may put us back, not decades, but centuries, in terms of the progress we could have otherwise had. Because I'm somebody, one of the reasons that I'm anti-war, and a lot of people, like, don't get me wrong, it's the moral reason first. The moral reason is you are grinding up the children of God in your war machine. And I always tell people who advocate for one war or another, I always say, who would Jesus bomb? They never seem to have a good answer for that one. I'm a very big believer in George Orwell's theory that, and it's not really a theory, it's more of an axiom, that war has a purpose, a very real purpose, which is why it's allowed to continue. Because always remember, any institution that serves its intended purpose will be allowed to continue. And the reason why this war or any war is ever allowed to continue is quite simple. It serves the intended purpose of what it's supposed to do. Now, what is it supposed to do? George Orwell said that war is intended to destroy, grind up, and eat away the excess of human labor. So all of the great progresses that we could make, all of the great wealth that could be acquired, all is ground up and destroyed in war. That is, in the Orwellian theory, which really does hold up in the 21st century, war is the release valve of human prosperity. When humans get too prosperous, war is there to grind it to powder. So when people ask me what's my favorite conspiracy, I always like to say, oh, my favorite conspiracy is easy. Everything's gonna be just fine. Yeah, that's a conspiracy theory. That's looniness. That's batshit craziness that I don't think anybody should ever believe. Now, like, I've been confronting myself with some questions here, like, because the idea is there's a real juxtaposition in my mind here, because everyone acknowledges the basic human right of self-defense. Okay, we all acknowledge that. every human being has the right to defend themselves from threats to themselves and their loved ones. That's a basic human right. We're about to see the difference between defense and revenge. We're getting very close to that. And it's sort of like the idea of, and it was a question I was confronted with the other day. Unfortunately, I don't think Ike was going to make it tonight. If he does, that'd be marvelous, because we accidentally stumbled on a conversation that's pretty much the pivotal conversation of our time and how we're going to be judged by. Now, I need to pause that brilliant and handsome philosopher king for a moment or two, because some of these comments really need. Rockhound says Israel has horrified the world. Not yet, but the thing is, we always know that Israel kind of goes a little overboard. Now, what's interesting is what's being said here. You would almost swear I was talking about this conflict now a year ago. Okay, so yeah, this is held up tremendously well. I mean, ridiculously well. Bandit goes, ideas and aspirations and hopes for the future. What is that a reference to? I want to say that's a quote I've heard before. I usually say that in reference. It's kind of like a paraphrase. If you've ever seen the end of Metal Gear Solid 2, where the boss gives a speech to Snake and she talks about the fact that there's no such thing as irretractable enemies. And that, it's one of those things where media can really have an impact. Like Metal Gear Solid, or no, it was Metal Gear Solid 3, the end of Metal Gear Solid 3. I remember that one had a profound impact on Tony and I. Like when the boss gave her speech about there being no such thing as an irretractable enemy at the end, it was moving. It was moving. If you've never seen it, you really do. And then you give the Fallout war never changes. But that's also why in Metal Gear Solid 4, Snake, the very first line is, war has changed. And yeah, I'm going to be, on Tuesday, I'm going to be talking to Dylan Burns. And yeah, he's going to be telling me all about how war has changed. Excuse me. But yeah, my personal favorite video game right now, the one I find myself playing the most, is actually Fallout 4. So the fact that war never changes. Now here's the thing: Fallout 4 is the best game. The best storyline, though, is New Vegas, and I will hear no objection of it whatsoever. Their factions were perfect juxtapositions to each other, and Fallout 4 is just trying to do all it can to recreate that, and it fell a little short. But great game. I love settlement building. It's like my own zen. Okay, like I shouldn't say that, but you know what I mean. It's like I can just kind of relax, just kind of build a settlement. And some of them are wacky, some of them are awesome. But all right, I'm let's see. We've got Mullet Baby 01 said Iranian leaders must be reading the book of Daniel right now. Yeah, either that or Second Kings. Yeah, but no, Daniel, maybe a little bit of Ezekiel. Yeah, they might want to be brushing up on that, but no, I think this is just going to be, here's the thing. Whenever there's a war, people think it's the end of times. This is the way I look at it, and this is just my reading of things, okay? Like I'm just one student of God's word. That's all I am. But what I will say is I remember looking at a chart. I wish I had saved this chart, but I didn't. And it had about 2,500 prophecies from the Bible. And on the chart, about 2,000 of the prophecies had come true. And we had about, give or take, about 500 more to go. And so to me, I think that represents a chunk of time for the last 500 to come true. I don't know if that would be covered in one person's lifetime, which is what leads me to believe. Now, again, I don't know the day. I do not know the hour. Don't ask me. But it leads me to believe that we might not be in the end of times. I live my life as if Jesus will come back next within this conversation, but I also plan to have a long life of proclaiming his word and plan on, thousands of years from now, people proclaiming his word because he hasn't come back yet. So that's how I look at it. But I love the reference. I'm actually going through the entire Old Testament. And like, because, folk, you read the Bible kind of like bit by bit, but I'm just reading it all from beginning to end. And just today, I finished Jeremiah, and Lamentations wasn't very long to get through it all. And then I was like, well, okay, this next one, how long is it? Oh, Ezekiel. Oh my, that is considerable. So that's where I'm at. So yeah, I've actually been reading through the Old Testament over the last couple of months now, trying to basically I want to get through the entire Old Testament, and I've almost got the entire New Testament already read within the last year. So like I'm trying to get through that again. You know what I mean? So, but all of it comprehensively. Let's see. Bandit goes, I prefer Fallout 3 over New Vegas, but that came down to geography, and I see New Vegas as the first Marvel movie to come out after Endgame. Okay. Okay. Now, to me, what I loved about New Vegas was it was it really was the factions, and it was the philosophy, because you had Caesar's Legion, which was a brutal response to the post-nuclear apocalyptic wasteland, where Caesar basically read the old books of Rome and basically made himself a Caesar, wiped out the cultures and tribal identities of anybody he conquered, made them slaves and soldiers. And it was a brutal response, but one that was appropriate for the really dire conditions of the wasteland. Then you had the NCR, which was sort of a reflection of all the corruption of the original American government that led to the bomb being dropped in the Fallout franchise. Which that, like the NCR, the New California Republic, they tried so hard to be America too, but in the end, Caesar was right. President Tandy was more like a dictator who had the love of the people. There's a reason why they kept electing her until she died. She had the people's love. That's a dictatorship with extra steps. Okay. And the NCR fell to heavy disarray after Tandy died. And so that you have that. And then you have the other faction, which is Mr. House and him running New Vegas. And he's like sort of like Walt Disney meets Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. I don't like, because he's like frozen in the basement, so it's kind of like making fun of Walt Disney's head being frozen. But he is like a hyper capitalist, and he talks about like how he wants to start bringing back industry. And to me, that was the faction that most interested me, because he was actually going to try to bring back industry and try to bring back a reason for there to be people and give people jobs and careers and reasons to not keep killing each other. So to me, Mr. House was in a weird way, the most ethical option of the major factions. I also just love the Kings. I thought that was hilarious that it was these people who found this emporium of Elvis impersonator stuff. And so they all talk like Elvis. They all like, where are the kings, Daddy? We talk like the king of cool. He was the king. And they didn't know who his name was. But no, I'll never forget that. I loved that game. But anyways, getting back into it, I may not have gotten that deep. That was almost 20 years ago. Yes, but I'm one of those people, like, I still play Skyrim. I don't care that's an old game. I love it. It's awesome. Um, I don't know. Did I? If there's a comment you want me to get to, definitely fire it off. Uh, No, I've gotten all your comments, but if you got a new one, fire it off. But I'm just curious the last few minutes of this video of mine, like, because so far I've been like, just you would swear I was talking about our current conflict. So I'm curious how she ends off. It gives me a chance to blow my nose off camera. Future generations. And it was how we're going to handle these wars. And to me, I understand supplying defensive arms and munitions, and in some instances that can even be valid. But the thing you have to realize is every time, and it doesn't matter how, like, oh, but it's just this one thing and it's just for this. Yeah. Every time you supply more military arms, every time you supply more military aid, every time you give more ammunition, every time you give more money, you're staving off how long until the eventual suing for peace, until the eventual meeting where people get together, sit down, talk it out, and figure out what you're going to do to live in some sort of peace, be that peace ever so base. That's where it's going to head eventually. The more money, the more arms, the more ammunition, the more men you send, the longer it takes to get there. That's the real problem. So with Ukraine, it's one of those like, oh, send money for this and that and everything. And okay, but we're just kind of staving off the inevitable deal that's going to have to happen there. It's happening, kids. Just get used to it. Israel. It's a tough question because we have a treaty with Israel. So, America, like, it's kind of a different animal from Ukraine, where we've been sending a lot of money to someone that's not actually a signed ally of ours. Now, I understand some of their reasoning. It's like, well, look, we're spending like 7-8% of our GDP to destroy Russia's military and economy entirely. That's the thinking. But man, I don't think Ukrainian and Russian teenagers and 20 somethings need to be getting ground to a fucking pulp because, well, we just need to hold off them peace talks just a little longer till we can get a slightly different, better advantage. That seems craven to me. In Ukraine, the thing is, you can't call both wars the exact same war because no two wars are alike, kind of in the same way that no two fights are alike. Styles make fights, like boxing matches. Sure, in any match, it's two guys wearing gloves that are going to hit each other. But beyond that, no two fights are similar because every style is a little different. All the metrics are a little different. With Israel, with Ukraine, Russia, at the end of the day, if it's advantageous enough for both sides to sue for peace, they'll probably come to the table and work something out. They'll hammer something out eventually. Like, whether we like it or not, Russia, Ukraine, they're probably going to hammer something out at some point. Okay. The Palestinian conflict's a little different. Like, when Israelis say this is an existential crisis, like, normally when people say existential crisis, it's hyperbole. This is not that case. This is a legitimate existential crisis for the Israelis. And there's no good answers here. Like, that's the problem, is there's no good answers because we all know, like, okay, Israel is going to defend itself and it's going to ensure its safety. We all know that's going to be a little farther than any of us would ever anticipate or okay. All right. Like, the minute I heard they turned the water off, I was like, fuck, this is getting dark. This is getting fucking dark fast. Now, what's funny is my cousin, she lived in Israel for several years and she goes there and visits friends all the time. And when the attack happened, I was like, oh, fuck, my cousin's not wrapped up in this shit, is she? And so it took us about a half day to get a hold of everybody to figure out she was in no harm in that way. It wasn't even, I don't think she was even in the country. So, but we were worried. It's my kin. You know what I mean? She was talking about the Iron Dome that the Israelis have. And she was talking about there's rockets that fly in all the time. And she talked about the shrapnel from these rockets getting intercepted from the Iron Dome, falling in people's yards like it was just the most ho-hum, glumdrum, like me explaining to you how a corn plant grows, was how she like, and once in a while there's some shrapnel that falls in your yard and you got to be careful about that. But other than that, yeah, not a big, like, what? Like, so the reality of their, like, the Palestinians clearly, evidently, as you can see, is what happened on the 7th of October, pretty much just want any and every Israeli they can get their hands on dead or kidnapped or inconvenienced in some way, shape, or form. Like, like, no matter whose numbers you look at, like, I remember the early numbers were like 1,000. Now I think we're like 13, 1,400. Even if it's 100, like, this is barbarism. Like, it's like, this is a traumatic event for the entire nation of Israel. And we all kind of know that. I'll never forget how my barber, when I was a wee little kid, I actually grew up with an old school barber. I'd go sit in his chair and he would, chat me up about all kinds of stuff. And he's a Blue Dog Democrat. But he straight up, like, because he explained to me when I was a wee little tot, the Israel-Palestine conflict, and he put in a very, very simple terms. Well, if the Jews get beat up enough, or if they get hurt enough in a conflict, it's not going to be good for the other side. I said, why do you say that, Chuck? And he goes, well, you see, the Jews, they don't believe in turning the other cheek. No. And he pointed right at his eye and said, they believe in eye for an eye. I was like, huh, really? And that, like, I was like 7 or 8, sitting in the barber chair and like all that, kind of like, okay, that seems like sort of one of those unstoppable force meets immovable object. And we truly are at the point where we are going to see the unstoppable force meets the immovable object if things escalate pretty much any further from where they are now. So, folks, do you feel that the people in charge have your best interests at heart? Do you feel like they're going to do really well for you? Because right now, I would be real worried about that. Oh, wait a minute. I got to address this. Brandon, I'll start paying attention when Jesus comes back. Woo-wee. Now, like I said earlier on this stream here, the big problem with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is neither of them will know peace. Neither will know peace. They will never know peace until Israelis and Palestinians, Jews and Muslims alike, accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, accept that the Son of God was crucified and died and took away the sins of the world. Until they acknowledge that, they will never know peace in that stretch of land. It's never going to happen. And so now, Brandon, that's something you and I know, but it's something that not a lot of people know. And there you have it, folks. That was, there I am. There's that beautiful mug of mine. There I am now. But yes, that was from about a year ago. And yeah, that held up. That held up. Every word, every syllable of that held up, I will say. Now, Mullet Baby says, I wonder if Israel is using Old Testament to guide their military goals. I look at Jeremiah 49:37, passage of Elam. Well, I just happen to, be right there. And we're going to start at 35. And we're going to read all the way to 38. So, and we're going to get 37 right in there. A reading from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 49, verses 35 through 38. Thus says the Lord of hosts, behold, I will break the bow of Elam, the mainstay of their might, and I will bring upon Elam the 4 winds from the 4 quarters of heaven, and I will scatter them to all those winds, and there shall be no nation to which those driven out of Elam shall not come. I will terrify Elam before their enemies and before those who seek their life. I will bring disaster upon them. My fierce anger, declares the Lord. I will send the sword after them until I have consumed them. And I will set my throne in Elam and destroy their king and officials, declares the Lord. Thus ends the reading of God's holy word. This is a very long chapter, too. And the beginning of it has a lot of Semitic names. I knew I was going to trip up on one or two of them. But thank you for that passage of scripture, sir. Love always. Israel is acting like a lion of Judah. Right now, Iran is like 10 times bigger than them. Okay. Yeah, I just pray for peace. I pray for a quick conclusion to this conflict because everybody in this conflict on both sides are made in God's image. Okay, it doesn't matter. And yes, they might believe the wrong thing now, but that doesn't mean that they can't come to Christ later. Okay, and so to me, whenever we can avoid these wars, I think that's a blessing. That's how I look at it, anyways. I pray that Israel finds a way to not. Like I said in that video, they're going to go a little overboard. They're going to go a little overboard, and we all know this. And I don't know what that's going to look like. And hang on, I want to see something. Oh, sweet. Can you still hear me? I want to know. I need to know something. Can you still hear me? Yes, you can still hear me. That's awesome. That is so awesome. I don't know why that amuses me, but I like it. Thank you, Bandit. That amuses me to no end. Now you see me. Now you don't. Now you see me. Now you don't. Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. I had to appease my inner 12-year-old with that one. But that was huh. And yeah, my take on war then agrees with my take on war now. Why is war allowed to continue? Because it serves its intended purpose, and its intended purpose is to serve Satan in the most direct way possible. Unless the Lord like in the Old Testament, the Lord commanded a handful of wars. When God commands it, we're talking something totally different. But when man just decides we're just going to march off to war just because, now we're not, that there's a difference between a preemptive strike and a defensive war. A defensive war holds to the just war principle, where even a Christian nation can defend itself in those circumstances. But we all know we're talking about a preemptive strike here. So now, yes, if Iran got a nuclear weapon, things would be bad. Yes, I acknowledge this. But regardless, since the end of World War II, it's been part of the post-war dream, okay, that major nations do not commit preemptive strikes. Now, whether we like it or not, the United States can't say a lot. Iraq was, whether we like it or not, now that enough time has passed and we can soberly look at it, that was the United States committing a preemptive strike. It was. We can debate that. We can deny it. We can say it shouldn't be. But there it is. The Iraq War was a preemptive strike. And now Israel is in a war of preemptive strike. And I really pray that our leader, Trump, has the wherewithal to stand up for what's actually right and to try to still bring peace no matter what. That's going to be the hardest. That's going to be the hardest thing to try and get done, because he's going to be told by everybody, don't do it. He's going to be flattered by everybody, don't do it. But man, Donald J. Trump is now the man that's at the helm of what is essentially World War III. I know I've been kind of joking around about that for some time, but I think we can now, like, without hyperbole, like, is there anybody out there that would like really just like hardcore fight me on whether this is World War III or not? Like, are you willing to really like die on that hill at this point that we're not in World War III? I'm curious. Is there anybody out there within the sound of my voice that would even give that kind of Bandit says Iran is Stan Gable, Ted McGinley to Israel's Lewis in a biblical Revenge of the Nerds. Oh my goodness. I was trying to figure out where you were going with that one, Bandit. Like what? But yeah, I'm curious, Bandit, what your thoughts are. Do you think this is World War? Like, I'm not even going to say, do you think this is World War III or not? But would you take the hard position that this is not World War III? Would you be willing to stake your position that there's just no way this is like, okay, too early to call World War III, but not, dude, you're out of your mind. Why would you even say it's possible for? But like, okay, maybe a little early to call. Bro, bro, I know you, dude. You're a down to earth, humble, just like normal guy. Like you're a good normal guy, okay? Like you're normal in the good way, not the like. Yeah, you don't want to, you want to be normal in the good way and weird in the good way, and you're both. You don't want to be weird in the bad way, okay? Because that's but like, and so, but dude, even you're like too close to call or a little early to call. You're not like absolutely, absolutely, yeah. You're normal, not a normie. That's a great way of putting that. I'm stealing that, okay? Uh, but yeah, you're a normal guy, and even you're like, okay, it's a little early to call, Phil. But you're not like, you're out of your mind. What are you talking about? Not even. Yeah. That's the one thing you can't do on a panel is pause for dramatic effect. You can't get away with that on a panel because somebody will immediately like, let me tell you something. Oh boy. Now, actually, just a few weeks ago, I had on the attorney extraordinaire Nate Dallin, and he gave his thoughts on the Ukraine war. So since we got one war, let's cover the very recent, like this is like a week old. This is hot off the presses. Now he's an attorney, an immigration attorney, really good guy. And but I'm going to let him speak for himself in terms of what's coming down in the Ukraine war. And he loves my introductions. What can I say? I'm awesome like that. And I am gonna send a message to some rapscallion ne'er do wells in the back room about like, okay, you ne'er do wells, why ain't you here? But yeah, this is Nate Dallin's take on the Ukraine war while I try to rustle. But we also this evening have a very, very special guest, folks. He is an attorney so good. He's an attorney so good that he could get light fishing with hand grenades reduced to just lighting off fireworks before the 4th of July. He is one of the finest attorneys in all God's creation. He is the man for you, the man from wearing the hat of BYU, the one, the only Nate Dallin. How we doing, sir?
Phil, as is always the case, your intros should just be the show. I mean, I think we can shut her down now. It's all downhill after that introduction.
Ukraine. I mean, like I know it's not exactly your area of expertise, but what's your general thought on that? I've been really curious.
So this is okay. Again, I have no special expertise. I'm not in on any phone calls. So I don't know. I don't know the personalities.
I don't know about that, Nate. They all call you. Don't. No,
actually,
we know. I'm gonna address what Mullet Baby 01, and we are so glad to have you this evening. The worry is if the Ayatollah regime is collapsing and the walls close in on him, no one knows what he would do. Attack on U.S. bases, attack on Saudi oil fields. We just don't know. Well, like you've probably seen that meme map where it's like Iran and then it's surrounded by these U.S. bases, and the caption says, you know what? If Iran didn't want war, why did it move its country next to so many of our military bases? Yeah, it would have plenty of bases to choose from, which that's that's served its purpose. But now you are correct in that regards. Now, yeah, the Saudi oil fields. Like, here's the reality that a lot of people don't know, Bullet Baby. People think that like the movie Independence Day is super realistic, where like if aliens were to attack, they would attack a major city. Nah, they wouldn't. They attack Saudi Arabia and they'd attack a handful of other places that supply and refine most of our oil so that they can shut down our fuel production by a huge percentage. They shut down our ability to create energy, and that's pretty much the end. Sorry, I was out in the field tonight, so got a little bit of pollen in my nose. But that would be basically the end of it. They would just attack our fuel and energy infrastructure, and that's the end. That's it. And Saudi Arabia would be one of those places. So if they blew up Saudi Arabia, the price of a barrel of oil would go up to about 150, almost $200 a barrel. Um, yeah, chaos, pure chaos. Looks like Israel must have enough oil stored up in some bunker somewhere underneath Tel Aviv that they're just willing to take that risk now. I this is the unfortunate reality, is if the energy infrastructure of our planet is interrupted, like folks like you and me, we're not going to we're going to feel some economic pain. We will. But there's going to be millions of people at the very bottom of this planet's economic ladder that will actually die because they don't have the energy that they need to maintain whatever equipment is sustaining what kind of life. Okay. So, I mean, medicines won't be manufactured for the lowest tier of the economic ladder of this planet. Millions of people will die. And so, if we can avoid that at all possible, that would be preferable. Yes, of course. But we will see. But you raise an excellent point, Mullet Baby. Now, Bandit had a comment that he wanted me to touch on, and I can't find it anywhere in the chat, but he sent it to me in a side chat of ours. And this is Bandit's comment, and he says, "Here is a hard square to circle. I am still for, quote, just the justified war, end quote. The problem is they've lied about any war that anyone thought was justified, that it's impossible to ever see any conflict as such." And there we go. That's a very good insight there, Bandit, because that's you and that's our big problem. It's like, okay, you've lied to us about every single war in our lifetime and most of them beforehand too. And all the people responsible were never held responsible, and you made no reforms or changes whatsoever, and you've actually rewarded the people that brought us into those false wars. But trust you, this time it's totally different. Yeah, like, yeah, it's gonna be no for me, dog. Who's that guy that hosts that reality show? But yeah, that's gonna be a big no from me. And that's why, like, yeah, we know we're being lied to about pretty much every war. Like this Ukraine war, we're gonna find out in 20 years it was about something that the most of the public was lied to. And yeah, we're gonna find out that that was just one giant, continuous, never-ending lie. And the people that did lie to us, they're going to pat themselves on the back about how noble they were for lying to us. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Lord Almighty. So that is the unfortunate reality there. But now I'm glad I got to your. Did I get to your comment to your satisfaction, Bandit? All right. I hope I did, sir. I hope I did, sir. But let's continue on with Monsieur Dallon.
When people talked about this Signal texting chain and how it was a scandal, I said, the only scandal is I didn't get invited. If you're going to be inviting citizens into these things without security clearances, why wasn't it me? Why was it this guy Goldberg? That's the annoying part, is why wasn't it me? Why wasn't it Phil? If you're going to put some citizens in, Phil and I have things to say about this.
Yeah. My favorite meme about it was Elon looking all sad going, wait, you guys have a side chat?
Okay, well, here's the problem as I see it. Certain countries are more stable as empires. So I'm going to say this again. Certain countries are more stable as empires. I'm going to give you one that's just, I don't think it's very controversial.
England.
The Persian Empire was more stable than Iran is stable today, right? So the Persian Empire is Farsi speaking. It was either run out of Tehran or Baghdad, depending on the time, but it was run by the Persian people, which is predominantly Iran and chunks of Iraq and a few other places. The United States and the Western powers specifically broke up that empire, right? Because they don't like a unified, powerful empire as a counterweight, and instead intentionally keep things chaotic to make sure that the balance of power is always on Team West. So that's what I believe has happened in the Middle East. The Persians, by the way, are not the only possible solution. There have been Arabian empires in the past, but same thing. They need more territory to be stable. Imagine for a moment, we're Nebraskans, Phil. Imagine if Eastern Nebraska and Western Nebraska really had a divorce. Both would be worse off. We would both be worse off for that. So the Western Nebraska folks, I know they feel a certain way about Omaha. I know that there are conversations around coffee and donuts on a Sunday morning that complains about the libtards in Lincoln and the purple-haired people in Omaha. I know. But if we're being honest about it, Nebraska as a contiguous state is better off with having both of us there. If we needed to defend our borders, splitting Nebraska in halvesies would be a disaster. No, what Eastern Nebraska could not defend itself. Western Nebraska cannot defend itself, right? Lack of manpower to the west and lack of resources to the east. We need each other. We're more stable as this particular unit. If you're Iran and you're the Persian Empire, or you're Saudi Arabia, or if you're Turkey, those are the three historical powers in that region. You need to have a bunch of the geography in the fold in order to be stable. And the West has had an enormous incentive to keep those places unstable so that they don't have to have a huge military presence and fight big wars. They can just allow things to be unstable. Now, I think that's what happened at the breakup of the Soviet Union. So I think that the Soviet Union and Russia, the empire of Russia, is most stable when all of Ukraine, the Baltic states, chunks of Finland and Sweden, chunks of Romania, and even a little chunk of Germany, that geographic place is stable when it's under one regime. If it's not under one regime and it's broken up into little pieces, they're going to be inherently unstable. They're going to have a hard time getting along. They can't share resources, a bunch of other stuff. So if that's the case, now just go with this assumption for a minute. Again, I'm not super smart. People like to say that it was NATO encroachment that actually spurred Russia onto conflict. I think that's wrong. I think it was the moment that the wall fell and the West started splitting up the Russian Empire. It made all of those places unstable. The United States took some of those unstable pieces and flooded them with cash, free trade agreements, and security arrangements because they could not be stable on their own elsewise, right? So they push instability into Russia from the moment they win the Cold War. And now that the United States is starting to take a step back, in part because of incompetence, let's be honest, the prior administration wasn't super competent, invited a little bit of a conflict, right? While at the same time, the Trump administration is looking at this and going, why are we picking sides inside of a place like Ukraine when really there's no upside for us? If the Russian Empire reasserts itself, I could see why that's bad for Germany. But if it's a friendly Russian Empire to the United States, why is that really a problem? It costs us less And heck, maybe we can cut a deal with Putin, right? So that's all the thinking on this. And so as the United States withdraws support from different regions of the world, the more natural, historic kind of situation in these geographic locations begins to reassert itself. So when you hear Putin, when he's talking to Tucker Carlson, when he's talking to his own media, he talks about the historic Russian Empire. He doesn't talk about the USSR, and he almost never mentions NATO. And that's for good reason. It's because if it wasn't Putin, I think other Russians would also say the world is a more peaceful and stable place when Russia is an empire versus when Russia is in little pieces and we're constantly in conflict with one another. So that's kind of my take. The United States is now, for the first time, reevaluating why are we shoving resources into these regions to maintain instability. Maybe it's time for stability. And I think that's actually Tulsi Gabbard's whole shtick. She's Team Syria because she thinks that a Turkey-Syria empire is the most stable situation for the Middle East. And it's not an Iran or it's not a Israel-led empire, right? So that's kind of my take on that. I don't know if you have. That was a lot of words. You can tell me.
No. I'll give my take here in just a minute. But Grow the Farm Up says to be America's enemy is dangerous. To be America's friend is fatal.
Today it feels that way. That's true. I'll tell you though. Ask the Japanese. They've been our friend. They remain our friend. They're doing great. Like it's not that complicated. I think the Canadians and the Mexicans have screwed this up, but that's another aside for another day.
My take is a little more simplistic than yours because you also got to keep in mind that crowd psychology is a part of it, so you can't overcomplicate it too much.
Sure.
Because I always keep in mind that economies, militaries, nations, those are all psychological engines. And my take on this is Russia's trying to go back to some version, and I said this the day of the invasion, that they're trying to go back to some version of Berlin Wall 2.0, where there's this little geographical spot, wherever it is doesn't really matter. Like where the spot is irrelevant. The fact that they just need the spot where we play political hopscotch around for 25 years. And they, in their mind, like in the Russian baby boomers' mind, they can make sense of the idea of that is the West being contained. They think it's like, okay, they're behind that wall, they're on the other side of that wall, the West is contained, they will move no further than that. And that's how, like, for I mean, I guess another word for Russian baby boomer would be Soviet. But like that's how they would generally view that. And so it doesn't even matter if it's a facile piece of Ukraine, so long as it's just some piece that they didn't have before. And that's kind of why I see this war as but it's really just not worth it. It's not been worth all the blood and the treasure that we've lost over it, because all we're doing is like we're fighting over a line on the map so people can have pride.
Well, I mean, I think that your position it tracks human psychology. I would just say that history indicates to me that if the war in Ukraine were to end tomorrow with the lines as currently drawn, that does not grant the stability I'm talking about, because the day after those lines are drawn, Russia does still not have access to European Union markets without heavy tariffs. They don't have access to Ukrainian population base, which is used to be, until all this violence, slightly younger, right, than the Russian population. They didn't have access to easy grain markets in the Ukraine, right? And they still wouldn't after those lines are drawn. So to me, I actually don't think that Trump is correct on this. I think his instinct makes sense, and I think that his instinct is good. But I think that the actual truth of the matter is that Russia, in order to be totally comfortable in its own skin, needs a little more empire for the prosperity of its own people, and arguably for the prosperity of the people inside that empire that they're acquiring anyway, right? That's one of the things is you have to remember there are a certain contingent of Ukrainians who are comfortable with being part of the Russian Empire, right? Because in a lot of ways, they'll be better off. So that's the only thing, is that I do agree there's a psychological component to this. There's no question, especially now that so much blood has been spilt. The idea that we could just expel the Russians from Ukraine at this point psychologically is a non-starter. But I do think that if Trump were to end the war tomorrow, no more material, the Europeans create the war, the security guarantee. If I'm Putin, I say no to the deal. I'm ahead. I'm finally actually winning the war. The border has moved a little bit to the Russian advantage. And I think he'll be better off, and the Russian people will be better off with a little more gains. And so I don't think he's done. And I think that, from my perspective versus your perspective, I think the possibility of conflict in the future is still high, unless you rewrite the whole board. If you, Phil, were to say, we're going to end the war tomorrow, and we're going to kick a couple of these countries out of the EU and create a new trading bloc with Russia that doesn't require an invasion. It's like a free trade zone. And we remove all the NATO weapons from right off of their border, they'd be calm. That would be true. But that extra layer of necessity, I don't think those countries are giving that up to the psychology of the moment, kind of to your point.
Yeah. Now, here's the problem. Well, for those countries anyways, is
reality is the problem.
If America says you're gonna do it, you kind of have to do it. It's like, that's like, welcome to the big boy games here. But to me, it's like, okay, I have a daughter that's almost an adult. Okay. And so I very much worry about, like, okay, is her and her generation going to get marched off because of this stupid Ukraine conflict that should have been solved a long time ago? And so when you're talking about, like, there's stability and what's possible for stability, like, so basically what you're saying is either a few extra countries drop out of the EU and make a trading bloc, or Putin just takes over all of Ukraine, and those are about the only things that would kind of satisfy him.
I think that's right. I think that you've just nailed it. And by the way, sadly for Europe, they've never had huge long stretches of stability, because guess who to the West also needs those same lands to be stable? The freaking Germans. And the Germans right now, they've been pussies for like 40, 60 consecutive years. And that's because the United States more or less took the strong arms of Germany and put them in slings and have let them atrophy. But if Germany decides to kick itself in the butt, abandon ship on a lot of the stupid that it's been doing for the last 60 years, go back to its nationalistic roots, Phil, how many times have the Germans found a way to crack parts of the Russian Empire? The sad news is that I don't think Europe can be stable unless Uncle Sam draws the lines. And that's a sucky situation. And to your point, here's what I think happens if we just left Europe tomorrow. Russia would get back its empire over the next, give it 5 years. At that 5-year mark, Germany will have truly rearmed. They'll be scared pissless. And then they will rediscover German nationalism and fully rearm. At that time, they'll start licking their lips and saying, wait, I think we're actually really good at killing Russians. We're actually really good at this. We've forgotten it. We've been in slumber for a long time. And then they're staring at each other. And then you have the potentials for a nuclear exchange. Not a big one. I'm not talking about like Berlin and Moscow will get nuked. I'm talking about artillery shells, tapped with uranium, making the boom boom 4 times bigger. But then that's one more little step. We cross that threshold. We're using small nukes in the field. How long before we make a worse decision as people?
So wait, so this time in the seemingly never-ending war between Germany and Russia, this
the
time
Bavarians
around,
and the Ruskies,
the United States would be on the side of the Germans?
No, actually. So first of all, it depends who's in charge.
General Patton would be happy.
Well, that's right. The answer to your question is it depends, right? If Trump is in charge when all this stuff is happening, then he's going to do whoever gives us the best deal. So it's totally transactional in his mind. And by the way,
got the best real estate.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to get a Trump Tower in northern Russia, Moscow, and southern Russia, and in Kyiv. This is great. No, but all joking aside, right now, if you were to just take those 3 pillars we talked about before, which are America first, it's a cultural movement against secularism, and it is working class based. Who's a better natural ally, the Russians or the Germans today?
A lot of people would probably view that as Russia. In that, because
I think so too.
Now, I'll never forget, I read this on Twitter where somebody said, okay, as a German, I just want to be very clear that the world wants us to build a military, march across Poland, and invade Russia. I just want to write this down now in case there's any confusion in the future. Okay.
This is no, that's right. I mean, and if I were to criticize some of the things that Trump has said, this would be one of the criticisms. I would tell President Trump, if you are begging France and Germany to arm themselves to the teeth, then they will use their shiny playthings. They will also feel this impulse to reestablish empire. Right? This is, I believe, that the United States more or less turned off imperialism for anybody but us. We were still working on a financial imperialism. We were working on a globalistic imperialism. Our imperialism was sort of the weirdest because it wasn't for the benefit of its citizens. It was just the benefit of its elites or something. It was like a very confusing kind of imperialism. But nonetheless, it was a version of imperialism. If we decide to turn off our own imperialism, there's sort of this vacuum that will be refilled by the Europeans. And doesn't stop there, Phil. You can look to Asia, you can look to the Middle East, and you have to start asking yourself the question, which empires will start to reassert themselves? I'll tell you what, the Japanese are real good at killing the Chinese. They're real good at that. And I'll tell you too, the Iranians and the Saudis, they're real good at killing each other. And the Turks are pretty good at ruling the Middle East. And so you just that's why history is such an important, little bit to this. You can kind of look back in time and say, what were the more stable, more prosperous empires in a state of nature without the U.S. dictating what's going to happen? History reasserts itself. That's kind of my take. Now,
well, Nate, please tell the folks if and where they can find you and everything, all that good stuff, good sir.
You can find me on Phil K.O.E. coming to you soon. I'm also on Twitter at symbol Nathan Dallin. My tag is confirmation bias. That's actually beware confirmation bias. Beware confirming your own biases. That's mostly for myself. I'm on constant notice that I should not be confirming my own biases because I have them.
Well, Nate, again, thank you, good sir, for swinging by. Folks, always remember, he is the finest attorney in all immigrationness. If basically he could find a way to get a Martian his citizenship late tonight or early tomorrow morning. That's how good he is. The one, the only Nate Dallin. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Love you.
God bless. That was wonderful. That was wonderful. That was fun. That was fun. Nate's a good man. Nate's a good man. He wants to talk theology with me sometime, which I would love to do. Bandit goes, Nate has magic underwear. T-shirt is underwear. I would love to talk theology with him sometime. Because there's a lot of things we would want to cover, and he's even agreed with some of my kind of weird out there analysis on the Mormon church as well. So, boy, can you tell I'm a farmer? Farmer's tan, boy. I just caught that right now. I just thought that was a little funny, but without further ado, there's something I want to read to you, and then I kind of want to touch on something else that's happened. This is the book of Nahum. A reading from the book of Nahum, chapter 1. An oracle concerning Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum of Elkosh. The Lord is a jealous and avenging God. The Lord is avenging and wrathful. The Lord takes vengeance on his adversaries and keeps wrath for his enemies. The Lord is slow to anger and great in power, and the Lord will by no means clear the guilty. His way is in whirlwind and storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. He rebukes the sea and makes it dry. He dries up all the rivers. Bashan and Carmel wither. The bloom of the Lebanon withers. The mountains quake before him. The hills melt. The earth heaves before him. The world and all who dwell in it. Who can stand before his indignation? Who can endure the heat of his anger? His wrath is pouring out like fire, and the rocks are broken into pieces by him. The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble. He knows those who take refuge in him. But with an overflowing flood, he will make a complete end of the adversaries and will pursue his enemies into darkness. What do you plot against the Lord? He will make a complete end. Trouble will not rise up a second time, for they are like entangled thorns, like drunkards as they drink. They are consumed like stubble fully dried. For you came one who plotted evil against the Lord, a worthless counselor. Thus says the Lord, though they are at a full strength in many, they will be cut down and pass away. Though I have afflicted you, I will afflict you no more. And now I will break his yoke from off you and will burst your bonds apart. The Lord has given commandment about you. No more shall your name be perpetuated. From the house of your gods I will cut off the carved image and the metal image. I will make your grave, for you are vile. Behold, upon the mountains, the feet of him who brings good news, who publishes peace. Keep your feasts, O Judah, fulfill your vows, for never again shall the worthless pass through you. He is utterly cut off. Thus ends the reading of God's holy word. Oh, there we go. Almost knocked over my mic. So now another thing we kind of need to bring up, and it's been resolved, but for a minute there, it looked like mom and dad were fighting. Elon Musk and Donald Trump were having themselves a little bit of a brawl, a little bit of a spat, if you will. And JD Vance was there with his emo makeup. Just like, no, mom, dad, don't fight. No, I'm kidding. But this bandit goes, Phil, getting back to me when the farmer's tan becomes permanent. Granted, my standard got a nickname and okay. I don't know what that means. But yeah, we got a bit of a farmer's tan, if you can't tell. Yeah, but hey, I'm a farmer. Also, can you tell I wear leather gloves a lot? Well, didn't pick that up until right now. Really shows up in the camera too, because yeah, you got to wear leather gloves, otherwise your hands just get chewed up. And I'd have lost the tip of my middle finger a couple years ago if it wasn't for the fact that I wear leather gloves as much as I do. But now, getting back to the Elon fight, that was one where it's like, okay, at one point Elon, I could kind of tell he's throwing some wild stuff out there. And so now what's funny is I got to give Elon credit. He found a way to make every lefty in the universe say, release the Epstein files. Well done. Well done, Elon. I got to give you credit there. But yeah, he found a way to make every lefty in God's creation say, release the Epstein files. You got to give him points. But yeah, they had a bit of a spat on the way out, didn't they? And this is in keeping with something Nate talked about. And this one's really a short video, so blink and you'll miss it. But this is Nate talking about the different factions in the Trump administration. Okay, and this one was, I made this its own individual video just because, like, once in a while, you have somebody that can really condense a lot of information into a single thought. And Nate was good at that. Now, I want you to see this. Now, of course, oh, there we go. Now, I of course got to put my joke in the beginning and the end because I am a really funny guy. But I want you to really pay attention to this because Nate really breaks it down here. He's a very smart guy that can put a lot of information into a few words. So check it out. But we also this evening have a very, very special guest, folks. He is an attorney so good. He's an attorney so good that he could get light fishing with hand grenades reduced to just lighting off fireworks before the 4th of July. He is one of the finest attorneys in all God's creation. He is the man for you, the man from wearing the hat of BYU, the one, the only Nate Dowling. How we doing, sir?
Phil, as is always the case, your intros should just be the show. I mean, I think we can shut her down now. It's all downhill after that introduction. To get this back to, if you want to be a peace-loving American, you have a couple. Luckily for the United States, we have a lot of options on the table. We can do J.D. Vance style isolationism. I believe that he is more on team, let the world burn. We just got to take care of our own. I actually do think Trump believes in a little bit of meddling. I think Trump has a little more, I want to go cut deals around the world. I want to be in the middle of all the action, right? He's got more of that kind of vibe to him.
I mean, the dude's trying to just take the Panama Canal, Greenland, and then out of nowhere, the Gaza Strip? What?
Right.
Yeah, you want to talk about some meddling. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Trump has a little more of this like meddling kind of impulse to him. And I also think that other people around him outside of Vance, so I think the true hardcore isolationist peaceniks are Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, and the guy who looks like Voldemort.
Boy, you gotta be more
graduated from Duke, Stephen Miller.
Okay,
right.
Yeah, there we go.
And then inside of the intelligentsia that's around Trump, you can throw in Bannon, right? He's all in for that. RFK Jr., I'm sure, is of the same mind, right? These guys are the hardcore. Like, we are not interested in one American bullet killing one person without serious cause, right? But then on the other side, you got Rubio, right? You've got Bessett from the Treasury Department. You've got Hegseth himself. I think Hegseth has shown he wants America to be kicking butts. And you don't be kicking butts if you're doing nothing, right? So these guys are more willing to go out and be active.
I get the feeling that Hegseth is going to be the guy that's like, he thinks it's better to ask forgiveness than permission from the president. Like, okay, all right, Mr. President, let's say that we bombed this island here. How mad would you be? Well, why did you do that? Sorry. Yeah, it's always better to ask forgiveness and permission from him. Now, he's a Marine, and so it's kind of funny that like some of the people that like hate Trump, but they're in kind of the neocon camp of folks that I kind of follow on Twitter. He's like their, other than this text thing, he's like their one like shining light of hope in the Trump administration. It's like, oh, okay, maybe a little bit of neocon, just kick butt goodness can make its way through. And I'm like, oh, okay, Pete, he's good, but he still serves at the pleasure of the president. So
no, that's right. Steve Bannon has said the most important conversations are going to be between these three factions inside of the White House. Steve Bannon is really leery of the techno oligarch guys. So we're talking Peter Thiel, David Sachs, Elon Musk, the PayPal mafia bros, right? They're kind of one faction of the party. And then there's still the militarily active in the world wing of the party. And then there's the true peace-loving wing of the party, right? And it's kind of broken up into those three groups. And Bannon thinks that the most important question for all of humanity, not just the United States, is which of those three groups is going to ultimately convince Trump and control policy. Because he thinks that it needs to be RFK Jr., J.D. Vance, and the peace-loving, America first, manufacturing, Christ-loving wing of the party. That needs to be who wins. It can't be the techno bros, and it can't be the guys who are still kind of war curious. And he thinks that's it. He's like, the only thing that matters over the next 4 years is out of those three groups, who's winning Trump's attention, who's winning that argument internally. And I find it to be fascinating. I don't know. That might be a little too simplistic, but I think there's some real insight there.
Now, to me, I'm kind of like between the peaceniks and the tech oligarchs. Like I don't mind either of them, just so long as the neocons are the ones who lose. Okay, like just so like guys, can we please work together?
On that topic, when you heard it was going to be Rubio, what did you think? Be honest, Phil. Be honest. It's okay.
I was not thrilled when I heard about Rubio. I knew he was going to easily sail through the Senate, and he's Secretary of State, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. When I was running for president, I realized that in order to be elected and allowed to keep my office, I was going to have to nominate the equivalent of Dick Cheney's floating brain in a jar at either the head of the DOD or the Secretary of State office. And so Marco Rubio is the fresh young face of Dick Cheney's floating brain in a jar. So it's like, okay, Trump, in order to not get assassinated, winky face, had to basically make it, you'll notice the bullets stopped flying at him after that, shortly thereafter. So Marco Rubio was his olive branch to the establishment,
the necessary poison in the administration.
Yep. That's that. Like, well, they won't blow up the room when Marco's in it. So
is he? Wait, are you insinuating that Marco's actually just a hostage in the White House?
I'm insinuating nothing of the kind, sir. But I see him as basically the olive branch of that neocon. Like they had to have a seat at the table whether we liked it or not because they're part of the party. Now, I'll never forget when my former co-host, he was one of those, I'm a moderate Republican and you guys can't win the election without me. And we totally won the election without any of them. It was hilarious. And so it was like, well, okay, guys, we need to give them at least a seat at the table, but they don't need to have a big one. So Marco Rubio, I don't suspect he'll actually sit all 4 years as secretary.
Oh, fascinating.
Like, I think he's gonna find some hole to plug himself in somewhere in politics, or he's gonna quit 3 years in and gear up for his own run for president or whatever. So he's transparently ambitious, to be frank. Like, God love Marco Rubio, but it's not hard to see his ambition is to be sitting in Trump's chair eventually.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, those are good thoughts. I'm interested in those thoughts.
Well, Nate, please tell the folks if and where they can find you and everything, all that good stuff, good sir.
You can find me on Phil K.O.E. Coming to you soon. I'm also on Twitter at symbol Nathan Dallin. My tag is confirmation bias. That's actually beware confirmation bias. Beware confirming your own biases. That's mostly for myself. I'm on constant notice that I should not.
You and I interact on Twitter a lot.
I have them.
Well, Nate, again, thank you, good sir, for swinging by. Folks, always remember, he is the finest attorney in all immigrationness. If basically he could find a way to get a Martian his citizenship late tonight or early tomorrow morning. That's how good he is. The one, the only Nate Dallin. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Love you.
God bless. There we have it. I'm sorry, God. Bandit says that tomorrow he's going to send me a whiskey review of his barbecue whiskey. Please do. I want nothing but to send me that. That is hilarious. I will get that edited and up as soon as I can. You just send me the raw video and I'll purdy it up. Don't you worry. Maybe take a selfie of yourself holding it too. Nice. And then Tony can totally you've seen what he can do. He's unto himself when it comes to that. But now since we're here, I've got an interesting turn because we're talking about war. We're going to go to a different direction than you might think, but one that just go with me on this one. Okay. But first, I'm going to read chapter 2 from the book of Nahum. A reading from the book of Nahum, chapter 2. And scatter has come up against you. Man the ramparts. Watch the road. Dress for battle. Collect all your strength. For the Lord is restoring the majesty of Jacob as the majesty of Israel. For plunderers have plundered them and ruined their branches. The shield of his mighty men is red. His soldiers are clothed in scarlet. The chariots come with flashing metal. On the day he musters them, the cypress spears are brandished. The chariots race madly through the streets. They rush to and fro through the squares. They gleam like torches. They dart like lightning. He remembers his officers. They stumble as they go. They hasten to the wall. The siege tower is set up. The river gates are opened. The palace melts away. Its mistress is stripped. She is carried off. Her slave girls lamenting, moaning like doves, and beating their breasts. Nineveh is like a pool whose water run away. Halt, halt, they cry, but none turns back. Plunder the silver, plunder the gold. There is no end of the treasure or of the wealth of all precious things. Desolate, desolation and ruin. Hearts melt and knees tremble. Anguish is in all loins. All faces grow pale. Where is the lion's den, the feeding place of the young lions, where the lion and lioness went, where his cubs were, which none to disturb? The lion tore enough of The lion tore enough for his cubs and strangled prey for his lioness. He filled his caves with prey and his dens with torn flesh. Behold, I am against you, declares the Lord of hosts, and I will burn your chariots in smoke, and the sword shall devour your young lions. I will cut off your prey from the earth, and the voice of your messengers shall no longer be heard. Thus ends the reading of God's holy word. Now, what we're getting into tonight is a treaty on war. Just go with me tonight on this one, folks. Just go with me and sit back, put your feet up, and enjoy. You know where we're going, folks. The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Read by Phil K.O.E. Dedicated to my daughter. Sun Tzu said, "The art of war is of vital importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death, a road either to safety or to ruin. Hence, it is a subject of inquiry which can on no account be neglected. The art of war, then, is governed by 5 consistent factors to be taken into account in one's deliberations when seeking to determine the conditions obtaining in the field. These are 1. The moral law, 2. Heaven, 3. Earth, 4. The commander, 5. Method and discipline. The moral law causes people to be in complete accordance with their ruler, so that they will follow him regardless of their lives, undismayed by any danger. Heaven signifies night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. Earth comprises distance, great and small, danger and security, open ground and narrow passes, the chances of life and death. The commander stands for the virtues of wisdom, sincerely, benevolence, courage, and strictness. By method and discipline are to be understood the marshaling of the army in its proper subdivisions, the graduations of rank among the officers, and the maintenance of roads by which supplies may reach the army and control of military expenditure. These 5 heads should be familiar to every general. He who knows them will be victorious. He who knows them not will fail. Therefore, in your deliberations, when seeking to determine the military conditions, let them be made the basis of a comparison in this wise. 1. Which of the 2 sovereigns is imbued with the moral law? 2. Which of the 2 generals has the most ability? 3. With whom lie the advantages derived from heaven and earth? 4. On which side is discipline most rigorously enforced? 5. Which army is stronger? 6. On which sides are officers and men more highly trained? 7. In which army is there the greater consistency both in reward and punishment? By means of these 7 considerations, I can forecast victory or defeat. The general that hearkens to my counsel and acts upon it will conquer. Let such a one be retained in command. The general that hearkens not to my counsel, nor acts upon it, will suffer defeat. let such a one be dismissed. While heading the profits of my counsel, avail yourself also of any helpful circumstances over and beyond the ordinary rules. According as circumstances are favorable, one should modify one's plans. All warfare is based on deception. Hence, when able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must seem inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near. Hold out baits to entice the enemy, feign disorder, and crush him. If he is secure at all points, be prepared for him. If he is superior in strength, evade him. If your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate him. Pretend to be weak that he may grow arrogant. If he is taking in his ease, give him no rest. If his forces are united, separate them. Attack him where he is unprepared. Appear where you are not expected. These military devices leading to victory must not be divulged beforehand. Now, the general who wins a battle makes many calculations in his temple ere the battle is fought. The general who loses a battle makes but few calculations beforehand. Thus do many calculations lead to victory and few calculations to defeat. How much more no calculation at all? It is by attention to this point that I can foresee who is likely to win or lose. Waging war. Sun Tzu said, in the operations of war, where there are in the field 1,000 swift chariots, as many heavy chariots, and 100,000 mail-clad soldiers with provisions enough to carry them 1,000 li, the expenditure at home and at the front, including entertainment of guests, small items such as glue and paint, and some spent on chariots and armor, will reach the total of 1,000 ounces of silver per day. Such is the cost of raising an army of 100,000 men. When you engage in actual fighting, if victory is long in coming, then men's weapons will grow dull and their ardor will be dampered. If you lay siege to a town, you will exhaust your strength. Again, if the campaign is protracted, the resources of the state will not be equal to the strain. Now, when your weapons are dulled, your ardor dampered, your strength exhausted, and your treasure spent, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of your extremity. Then no man, however wise, will be able to avert the consequences that must ensue. Thus, though we have heard of stupid haste in war, cleverness has never been associated with long delays. There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. It is only one who is thoroughly acquainted with the evils of war that can thoroughly understand the profitable way of carrying it on. The skillful soldier does not raise a second levy, neither are his supply wagons loaded more than twice. Bring war material with you from home, but forage on the enemy. Thus the army will have food enough as it needs. Poverty of the state exchequer causes an army to be maintained by contributions from a distance. Contributing to maintain an army at a distance causes the people to be impoverished. On the other hand, the proximity of an army causes prices to go up, and high prices causes the people's subsistence to be drained away. When their subsistence is drained away, the peasantry will be afflicted by heavy exactions. With this loss of subsistence and exhaustion of strength, the homes of the people will be stripped bare, and 3/10 of their income will be dissipated, while government expenses for broken chariots, worn out horses, breastplates, helmets, bows and arrows, spears and shields, protective mantlets, draught oxen, and heavy wagons will amount to 4/10 of its total revenue. Hence, a wise general makes a point of foraging on the enemy. One cartload of the enemy's provisions is equivalent to 20 of one's own, and likewise a single pickle of his provender is equivalent to 20 from one's own store. Now, in order to kill the enemy, Our men must be roused to anger, that there may be advantage from defeating the enemy. They must have their rewards. Therefore, in chariot fighting, when 10 or more chariots have been taken, those should be rewarded who took the first. Our own flag should be substituted for those of the enemy, and the chariots mingled and used in conjunction with ours. The captured soldiers should be kindly treated and kept. This is called using the conquered foe to augment one's own strength. In war, then, let your great objective be victory, not lengthy campaigns. Thus, it may be known that the leader of armies is the arbiter of the people's fate, the man on whom it depends whether the nation shall be in peace or in peril. Attack by stratagem. Sun Tzu said, in the practical art of war, the best thing of all is to take the enemy's country whole and intact. To shatter and destroy it is not so good. So too is it better to recapture an army entire than to destroy it. To capture a regiment, a detachment, or a company entire than to destroy them. Hence, to fight and conquer all in your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. Thus, the highest form of generalship is to balk the enemy's plans. The next best is to prevent the junction of the enemy's forces. The next in order is to attack the enemy's army in the field. And the worst policy of all is to besiege walled cities. The rule is not to besiege walled cities if it can be possibly avoided. The preparation of manlets, movable shelters, and various implements of war will take up 3 whole months, and the piling up of mounds over against the walls will take 3 months more. The general, unable to control his irritation, will launch his men to the assault like a swarming ant, with the results that 1/3 of his men are slain while the town still remains untaken. Such are the disastrous effects of a siege. Therefore, the skillful leader subdues the enemy's troops without any fighting. He captures their cities without laying siege to them. He overthrows their kingdom without lengthy operations in the field. With his forces intact, he will dispute the mastery of the empire, and thus, without losing a man, his triumph will be complete. This is the method of attacking by stratagem. It is the rule in war. If our forces are 10 to the enemy's 1, to surround him; if 5 to 1, to attack him; if twice as numerous, to divide our army into 2. If equally matched, we can offer battle. If slightly inferior in numbers, we can avoid the enemy. If quite unequal in every way, we can flee. Hence, though an obstinate fight might be made by a small force, in the end, it must be captured by the larger force. Now, the general is the bulwark of the state. If the bulwark is complete at all points, the state will be strong. If the bulwark is defective, the state will be weak. Therefore, there are 3 ways in which a ruler can bring misfortune upon his army. 1. By commanding the army to advance or to retreat, being ignorant of the fact that it cannot obey. This is called hobbling the army. 2. By attempting to govern an army in the same way as he administers a kingdom, being ignorant of the conditions which obtain in an army. This causes restlessness in the soldiers' minds. 3. By employing the officers of his army without discrimination through ignorance of the military principle of adaptation to circumstances. This shakes the confidence of the soldiers. But when the army is restless and distrustful, trouble is sure to come from the other feudal princes. This is simply bringing anarchy into the army and flinging victory away. Thus, we may know there are 5 essentials for victory. 1. He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. 2. He will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces. 3. He will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout all its ranks. 4. He will win who prepared himself waits to take the enemy unprepared. 5. He will win who has the military capacity and is not interfered with by the sovereign. Hence the saying, if you know the enemy and know yourself, You need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Tactical dispositions. Sun Tzu said, "The good fighters of old put themselves beyond the possibility of defeat and then waited for an opportunity of defeating the enemy. To secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. Thus, the good fighter is able to secure himself against defeat, but cannot make certain of defeating the enemy. Hence the saying, one may know how to conquer without being able to do it." Security against defeat implies defensive tactics. Ability to defeat the enemy means taking the offensive. Standing on the defensive indicates insufficient strength. Attacking, a superabundance of strength. The general who is skilled in defense hides in the most secret recesses of the earth. He who is skilled in attack flashes forth from the topmost heights of heaven. Thus, on the one hand, we have the ability to protect ourselves, on the other, a victory that is complete. To see victory only when it is within the ken of the common herd is not the acme of excellence. Neither is it the acme of excellence if you fight and conquer the whole empire, says, "Well done." To lift an autumn hair is no sign of great strength. To see the sun and the moon is no sign of sharp sight. To hear the noise of thunder is no sign of a quick ear. What the ancients called a clever fighter is one who not only wins, but excels in winning with ease. Hence, his victories bring him neither reputation for wisdom nor credit for courage. He wins his battles by making no mistakes. Making no mistakes is what establishes the certainty of victory, for it means conquering an enemy that is already defeated. Hence, the skillful fighter puts himself in a position which makes defeat impossible and does not miss the moment for defeating the enemy. Thus, it is that in war, the victorious strategist only seeks battle after the victory has been won, whereas he who is destined to defeat first fights and afterwards looks for victory. The consummate leader cultivates the moral law and strictly adheres to method and discipline. Thus, it is in his power to control success. In respect of military method, we have firstly, measurement, secondly, estimation of quantity, thirdly, calculation, fourthly, balancing of chances, fifthly, victory. Measurement owes its existence to earth, estimation of quantity to measurement, calculation to estimation of quantity, balancing of chances to calculation, and victory to balancing of chances. A victorious army opposed to a routed one is as a pound's weight placed in the scales against a single grain. The onrush of a conquering force is like the bursting of a pent-up waters into a chasm 1,000 fathoms deep. Energy. Sun Tzu said, "The control of a large force is the same principle as the control of a few men. It is merely a question of dividing up their numbers." Fighting with a large army under your command is no wise different from fighting with a small one. It is merely a question of instituting signs and signals. To ensure that your whole host may withstand the brunt of the enemy's attack and remain unshaken, this is effected by maneuvers direct and indirect. That the impact of your army may be like a grinding stone dashed against an egg. This is effected by the science of weak points and strong. In all fighting, the direct method may be used for joining battle, but indirect methods will be needed in order to secure victory. Indirect tactics, effectively applied, are inexhaustible as heaven and earth, unending as the flow of rivers and streams, like the sun and moon. They end but to begin anew, like the four seasons. They pass away to return once more. There are no more than 5 musical notes, yet the combination of these 5 give rise to more melodies than can ever be heard. There are no more than 5 primary colors: blue, yellow, red, white, and black. Yet in combination, they produce more hues than can ever be seen. There are no more than 5 cardinal tastes: sour, acrid, salt, sweet, bitter. Yet combinations of them yield more flavors than can ever be tasted. In battle, there are not more than two methods of attack, the direct and the indirect. Yet these two in combination give rise to an endless series of maneuvers. The direct and the indirect lead on to each other in turn. It is like moving in a circle. You never come to an end. Who can exhaust the possibilities of their combination? The onset of troops is like the rush of a torrent, which will even roll stones along in its course. The quality of decision is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon, which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. Therefore, the good fighter will be terrible in his onset and prompt in his decision. Energy may be likened to the bending of a crossbow, decision to the releasing of a trigger. Amid the turmoil and tumult of battle, there may be seeming disorder and yet no real disorder at all. Amid confusion and chaos, your array will be without head or tail, yet it will be proof against defeat. Simulated disorder postulates perfect discipline. Simulated fear postulates courage. Simulated weakness postulates strength. Hiding order beneath the cloak of disorder is simply a question of subdivision. Concealing courage under a show of timidity presupposes a fund of latent energy. Masking strength with weakness is to be affected by tactical dispositions. Thus, one who is skillful at keeping the enemy on the move maintains deceitful appearances according to which the enemy will act. He sacrifices something that the enemy may snatch at it. By holding out baits, he keeps him on the march. Then, with a body of picked men, he lies in wait for him. The clever combatant looks to the effect of combined energy and does not require too much from individuals, hence his ability to pick out the right men and utilize combined energy. When he utilizes combined energy, his fighting men become as it were like unto rolling logs or stones, for it is the nature of a log or stone to remain motionless on level ground and to move when on a slope, if four-cornered, to come to a standstill, but if round-shaped, to go rolling down. Thus, the energy developed by good fighting men is as the momentum of a round stone rolled down a mountain thousands of feet in height. So much on the subject of energy. Weak points and strong. Sun Tzu said, "Whoever is first in the field and awaits the coming of the enemy will be fresh for the fight. Whoever is second in the field and has to hasten to battle will arrive exhausted." Therefore, the clever combatant imposes his will on the enemy, but does not allow the enemy's will to be imposed on him. By holding out advantages to him, he can cause the enemy to approach of his own accord, or by inflicting damage, he can make it impossible for the enemy to draw near. If the enemy is taking his ease, he can harass him. If well supplied with food, he can starve him out. If quietly encamped, he can force him to move. Appear at points which the enemy must hasten to defend. March swiftly to places where you are not expected. An army may march with great distances without distress if it marches through country where the enemy is not. You can be sure of succeeding in your attack if you only attack places which are undefended. You can ensure the safety of your defense if you only hold positions that cannot be attacked. Hence, that general is skillful in attack whose opponent does not know what to defend. He is skillful in defense whose opponent does not know what to attack. O divine art of subtlety and secrecy! Through you we learn to be invisible, through you inaudible, and hence we can hold the enemy's fate in our hands. You may advance and be absolutely irresistible. If you make for the enemy's weak point, you may retire and be safe from pursuit if your movements are more rapid than those of the enemy. If we wish to fight, the enemy can be forced to an engagement even though he be sheltered behind a high rampart and deep ditch. All we need to do is attack some other place that he will be obliged to relieve. If we do not wish to fight, we can prevent the enemy from engaging us even though the lines of our encampment be merely traced out on the ground. All we need do is to throw something odd and unaccountable in his way. By discovering the enemy's dispositions and remaining invisible ourselves, we keep our forces concentrated, while the enemy's must be divided. We can form a single united body, while the enemy must split up into factions. Hence, there will be a whole pitted against separate parts of a whole, which means that we shall be many to the enemy's few. And if we are able thus to attack an inferior force with a superior one, our opponents will be in dire straits. The spot where we intend to fight must not be made known, for then the enemy will have to prepare against a possible attack at several different points, and his forces being thus distributed in many directions. The numbers we shall have to face at any given point be proportionately few. Should the enemy strengthen his van, we will weaken the rear. Should he strengthen his rear, we will weaken his van. Should he strengthen his left, we will weaken his right. Should he strengthen his right, we will weaken his left. If he sends reinforcements everywhere, he will be everywhere weak. Numerical weakness comes from having to prepare against possible attacks. Numerical strength from compelling our adversary to make these preparations against us. Knowing the place and time of the coming battle, we may concentrate from the greatest distance in order to fight. But if neither time nor place be known, then the left wing will be impotent to succor the right equally impotent to succor the left, the van unable to relieve the rear, and the rear to support the van. How much more so if the furthest portions of the army are anything under 100 li apart, and even the nearest are separated by several li. Though according to my estimates, the soldiers of you exceed our own in number, that shall advantage them nothing in the matter of victory. I say then that victory can be achieved. Though the enemy be stronger in numbers, we may prevent him from fighting, scheme so as to discover his plans and the likelihood of their success. Rouse him and learn the principle of his activity or inactivity. Force him to reveal himself so as to find out his vulnerable spots. Carefully compare the opposing army with your own so that you may know where strength is superabundant and where it is deficient. In making tactical dispositions, the highest pitch you can attain is to conceal them. Conceal your dispositions, and you will be safe from the prying of the subtlest spies, from the machinations of the wisest brains. How victory may be produced from them out of the enemy's own tactics, that is what the multitude cannot comprehend. All men can see the tactics whereby I conquer, but what none can see is the strategy out of which victory is evolved. Do not repeat the tactics which have gained you one victory, but let your methods be regulated by the infinite varieties of circumstance. Military tactics are like unto water, for water in its natural course runs away from high places and hastens downward. So in war, the way is to avoid what is strong and to strike at what is weak. Water shapes its course according to the nature of the ground over which it flows. The soldier works out his victory in relation to the foe whom he is facing. Therefore, just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions. He who can modify his tactics in relation to his opponent and thereby succeed in winning may be called a heaven-born captain. The 5 elements, water, fire, wood, metal, earth, are not always equally predominant. The 4 seasons make way for each other in turn. There are short days and long. The moon has its periods of waxing and waning. Maneuvering. Sun Tzu said, in war, the general receives his commands from the sovereign. Having collected an army and concentrated his forces, he must blend and harmonize the different elements, therefore, before pitching his camp. After that comes tactical maneuvering, than which there is nothing more difficult. The difficulty of tactical maneuvering consists in turning the devious into the direct, the misfortune into gain. Thus, to take a long and circuitous route, after enticing the enemy out of the way and through starting after him, the contrive to reach the goal before him shows knowledge of the artifice of deviation. Maneuvering with an army is advantageous. With an undisciplined multitude, most dangerous. If you set a fully equipped army in march in order to snatch an advantage, the chances are that you will be too late. On the other hand, to detach a flying column for the purpose involves the sacrifice of its baggage and stores. Thus, if you order your men to roll up their buff coats and make forced marches without halting day or night, covering double the usual distances at a stretch, doing 100 li in order to wrest an advantage, the leaders of all 3 divisions will fall into the hands of the enemy. The stronger men will be in front, the jaded ones will fall behind, and on this plan, only 1/10 of your army will reach its destination. If you march 50 li in order to outmaneuver the enemy, you will lose the leader of your first division, and only half your force will reach the goal. If you march 30 li with the same objective, 2/3 of your army will arrive. We may take it then that an army without its baggage train is lost. Without provisions, it is lost. Without bases of supply, it is lost. We cannot enter into allegiances until we are acquainted with the designs of our neighbors. We are not fit to lead an army on the march unless we are familiar with the faces of the country, its mountains and forests, its pitfalls and precipices, its marshes and swamps. We shall be unable to turn natural advantage to account unless we make use of local guides. In war, practice dissimulation, and you will succeed. Whether to concentrate or to divide your troops must be decided by circumstances. Let your rapidity be that of the wind, your compactness that of the forest. In raiding and plundering, be like fire, as immovable like a mountain. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. When you plunder a countryside, let the spoils be divided amongst your men. When you capture new territory, cut it up into allotments for the benefits of the soldiery. Ponder and deliberate before you make a move. He will conquer who has learned the artifice of deviation. Such is the art of maneuvering. The book of army management says, on the field of battle, the spoken word does not carry far enough. Hence the institution of gongs and drums. Nor can ordinary objects be seen clearly enough. Hence the institution of banners and flags. Gongs and drums, banners and flags are means whereby the ears and eyes of the host may be focused on one particular point. The host thus forming a single united body, it is impossible either for the brave to advance alone or for the cowardly to retreat alone. This is the art of handling large masses of men. In night fighting, then, make much use of signal fires and drum, and in fighting by day, of flags and banners as a means of influencing the eyes and ears of your army. A whole army may be robbed of its spirits. A commander-in-chief may be robbed of his presence of mind. Now, a soldier's spirit is keenest in the morning. By noonday, it has begun to flag, and in the evening, his mind is bent only on returning to camp. A clever general, therefore, avoids an army when its spirit is keen, but attacks when it is sluggish and inclined to return. This is the art of studying moods. Discipline and calm, to await the appearance of disorder and hubbub amongst the enemy. This is the art of retaining self-possession. To be near the goal while the enemy is still far from it, to wait at ease while the enemy is toiling and struggling, to be well fed while the enemy is famished. This is the art of husbanding one's strength. To refrain from intercepting an enemy whose banners are in perfect order, to refrain from attacking an army drawn up in calm and confident array, this is the art of studying circumstance. It is a military axiom not to advance uphill against the enemy, nor to oppose him when he comes downhill. Do not pursue an enemy who simulates flight. Do not attack soldiers whose temper is keen. Do not swallow bait offered by the enemy. Do not interfere with an army that is returning home. When you surround an army, leave an outlet free. Do not press a desperate foe too hard. Such is the art of warfare. Variation in tactics. Sun Tzu said, in war, the general receives his commands from the sovereign, collects his army, and concentrates his forces. When in difficult country, do not encamp. In country where high roads intersect, join hands with your allies. Do not linger in dangerously isolated positions. In hemmed-in situations, you must resort to stratagem. In desperate positions, you must fight. There are roads which must not be followed, armies which must not be attacked, towns which must be besieged, positions which must not be contested, commands of the sovereign which must not be obeyed. The general who thoroughly understands the advantages that accompany variations of tactics knows how to handle his troops. The general who does not understand these may be well acquainted with the configurations of the country, yet will not be able to turn his knowledge to practical account. So, the student of war who is unversed in the art of war of varying his plans, even though he be acquainted with the 5 advantages, will fail to make best use of his men. Hence, in the wise leader's plans, considerations of advantage and of disadvantage will be blended together. If our expectation of advantage be tempered in this way, we may succeed in accomplishing the essential part of our schemes. If, on the other hand, in the midst of difficulties, we are always ready to seize an advantage, we may extricate ourselves from misfortune. Reduce the hostile chiefs by inflicting damage on them and make trouble for them, and keep them constantly engaged. Hold out specious allurements and make them rush to any given point. The art of war teaches us not to rely on the likelihood of the enemy's not coming, but on our own readiness to receive him, not on the chance of his not attacking, but rather the fact that we have made our position unassailable. There are 5 dangerous faults which may affect a general. 1. Recklessness, which leads to destruction. 2. Cowardice, which leads to capture. 3. A hasty temper, which can be provoked by insults. 4. A delicacy of honor, which is sensitive to shame. 5. Over solicitude from his men, which exposes him to worry and trouble. These are the 5 besetting sins of a general, ruinous to the conduct of war. When an army is overthrown and its leader slain, the cause will surely be found among these 5 dangerous faults. Let them be a subject of meditation. Army on the march. Sun Tzu said, "We come now to the question of encamping the army and observing signs of the enemy. Pass quickly over mountains and keep them in the neighborhood of the valleys. Camp in high places, facing the sun. Do not climb heights in order to fight. So much for mountain warfare. After crossing a river, you should get far away from it. When an invading force crosses a river in its onward march, do not advance to meet it in midstream. It will be best to let half the army get across and then deliver your attack. If you are anxious to fight, you should not go to meet the invader near a river which he has to cross. Moor your craft higher up than the enemy and facing the sun. Do not move upstream to meet the enemy. So much for river warfare. In crossing salt marshes, your sole concern should be to get over them quickly without any delay. If forced to fight in a salt marsh, you should have water and grass near you and get your back to a clump of trees. So much for operations in salt marshes. In dry, level country, take up an easily accessible position with rising ground to your right and on your rear, so that the danger may be in front and safety lie behind. So much for campaigning in flat country. These are the 4 useful branches of military knowledge which enabled the Yellow Emperor to vanquish 4 several sovereigns. All armies prefer high ground to low and sunny places to dark. If you are careful of your men and camp on hard ground, the army will be free from disease of every kind, and this will spell victory. When you come to a hill or bank, occupy the sunny side, with the slope on your right rear. Thus, you will at once act for the benefit of your soldiers and utilize the natural advantages of the ground. When, in consequence of heavy rains up country, a river which you wish to ford is swollen and flecked with foam, you must wait until it subsides. Country in which there are precipitous cliffs with torrents running between, deep natural hollows, confined places, tangled thickets, quagmires, and crevices should be left with all possible speed and not approached. While we keep away from such places, we should get the enemy to approach them. While we face them, we should let the enemy have them on his rear. If in the neighborhood of your camp there should be any hilly country, ponds surrounded by aquatic grass, hollow basins filled with reeds, or woods with thick undergrowth, they must be carefully routed out and searched, for these are places where men in ambush or insidious spies are likely to be lurking. When the enemy is close at hand and remains quiet, he is relying on the natural strength of his position. When he keeps aloof and tries to provoke a battle, he is anxious for the other side to advance. If his place of encampment is easy of access, he is tendering a bait. Movement amongst the trees of a forest shows that the enemy is advancing. The appearance of a number of screens in the midst of thick grass means that the enemy wants to make us suspicious. The rising of birds in their flight is the sign of an ambush. Startled beasts indicate that a sudden attack is coming. When there is dust rising in a high column, it is the sign of chariots advancing. When the dust is low but spread over a wide area, it betokens the approach of infantry. When it branches out in different directions, it shows that parties have been sent to collect firewood. A few clouds of dust moving to and fro signify that the army is encamping. Humble words and increased preparations are signs that the enemy is about to advance. Violent language and driving forward as if to the attack are signs that he will retreat. When light chariots come out first and take up a position on the wings, it is a sign that the enemy is forming for battle. Peace proposals unaccompanied by a sworn covenant indicate a plot. When there is much running about and the soldiers fall into rank, it means that the critical moment has come. When some are seen advancing and some retreating, it is a lure. When soldiers stand leaning on their spears, they are faint from want of food. If those who are sent to draw water begin by drinking themselves, the army is suffering from thirst. If the enemy sees an advantage to be gained and makes no effort to secure it, the soldiers are exhausted. If birds gather on any spot, it is unoccupied. Clamor by night betokens nervousness. If there is disturbance in the camp, the general's authority is weak. If the banners and flags are shifted about, sedition is afoot. If the officers are angry, it means that the men are weary. When an army feeds its horses with grain and kills its cattle for food, and when the men do not hang their cooking pots over the campfires, showing that they will not return to their tents, you may know that they are determined to fight to the death. The sight of men whispering together in small knots or speaking in subdued tones points to disaffection amongst the rank and file. Too frequent rewards signify that the enemy is at the end of his resources. Too many punishments betray a condition of dire distress. To begin by bluster, but afterwards to take fright at the enemy's numbers, shows a supreme lack of intelligence. When envoys are sent with compliments in their mouths, it is a sign that the enemy wishes for a truce. If the enemy's troops march up angrily and remain facing ours for a long time without either joining battle or taking themselves off again, the situation is one that demands great vigilance and circumspection. If our troops are no more in number than the enemy, that is amply sufficient. It only means that no direct attack can be made. What we can do is simply to concentrate all our available strength, keep a close watch on our enemy, and obtain reinforcements. He who exercises no forethought but makes light of his opponents is sure to be captured by them. If soldiers are punished before they have grown attached to you, they will not prove submissive, and unless submissive, they will be practically useless. If when the soldiers have become attached to you, punishments are not enforced, they will still be useless. Therefore, soldiers must be treated in the first instance with humanity, but kept under control by means of iron discipline. This is a certain road to victory. If in training soldiers' commands are habitually enforced, the army will be well disciplined. If not, its discipline will be bad. If a general shows confidence in his men, but always insists on his orders being obeyed, the gain will be mutual. Terrain. Sun Tzu said, we may distinguish 6 kinds of terrain, to wit: 1. Accessible ground. 2. Entangling ground. 3. Temporizing ground. 4. Narrow passes. 5. Precipitous heights. 6. Positions at a great distance from the enemy. Ground which can be freely traversed by both sides is called accessible. With regards to grounds of this nature, be before the enemy in occupying the raised and sunny spots and carefully guard your line of supplies. Then you will be able to fight with advantage. Ground which can be abandoned but is hard to reoccupied is called entangling. From a position of this sort, if the enemy is unprepared, you may sally forth and defeat him. But if the enemy is prepared for your coming and you fail to defeat him, then return being impossible, disaster will ensue. When the position is such that neither side will gain by making the first move, it is called temporizing ground. In a position of this sort, even though the enemy should offer us an attractive bait, it will be advisable not to stir forth, but rather to retreat, thus enticing the enemy in his turn. Then, when part of his army has come out, we may deliver our attack with advantage. With regard to narrow passes, if you can occupy them first, let them be strongly garrisoned and await the advent of the enemy. Should the army forestall you in occupying a pass, do not go after him if the pass is fully garrisoned, but only if it is weakly garrisoned. With regards to precipitous heights, if you are beforehand with your adversary, you should occupy the raised and sunny spots and wait for him to come up. If the enemy has occupied them before you, do not follow him, but retreat and try to entice him away. If you are situated at a great distance from the enemy and the strength of the two armies is equal, it is not easy to provoke a battle, and fighting will be to your disadvantage. These 6 are the principles connected with earth. The general who has attained a responsible post must be careful to study them. Now, an army is exposed to 6 several calamities, not arising from natural causes, but from faults in which the general is responsible. These are 1. Flight. 2. Insubordination. 3. Collapse. 4. Ruin. 5. Disorganization. 6. Rout. Other conditions being equal, if one force is hurled against another 10 times its size, the result will be the flight of the former. When the common soldiers are too strong and their officers too weak, the result is insubordination. When the officers are too strong and the common soldiers too weak, the result is collapse. When the higher officers are angry and insubordinate, and on meeting the enemy give battle on their own account from a feeling of resentment before the commander-in-chief can tell whether or no he is in a position to fight, the result is ruin. When the general is weak and without authority, when his orders are not clear and distinct, when there are no fixes duties assigned to officers and men, and the ranks are formed in a slovenly, haphazard manner, the result is utter disorganization. When a general, unable to estimate the enemy's strengths, allows an inferior force to engage a larger one, or hurls a weak detachment against a powerful one, and neglects to place picked soldiers in the front rank, the result must be rout. These are 6 ways of courting defeat, which must be carefully noted by the general who has attained a responsible post. The natural formation of the country is the soldier's best ally, but a power of estimating the adversary, of controlling the forces of victory, and of shrewdly calculating difficulties, dangers, and distances constitutes the test of a great general. He who knows these things and in fighting puts his knowledge into practice will win his battles. He who knows them not nor practices them will surely be defeated. If fighting is sure to result in victory, then you must fight, even though the ruler forbid it. If fighting will not result in victory, then you must not fight, even at the ruler's bidding. The general who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose only thought is to protect his country and do good service for his sovereign, is the jewel of the kingdom. Regard your soldiers as your children, and they will follow you into the deepest valleys. Look upon them as your own beloved sons, and they will stand by you even unto death. However, if you are indulgent but unable to make your authority felt, kind-hearted but unable to enforce your commands, and incapable, moreover, of quelling disorder, then your soldiers must be likened to spoiled children. They are useless for any practical purpose. If we know that our own men are in a condition to attack but are unaware that the enemy is not open to attack, we have gone only halfway towards victory. If we know that the enemy is open to attack but are unaware that our own men are not in a condition to attack, we have gone only halfway towards victory. If we know that the enemy is open to attack and also know that our men are in a condition to attack but are unaware that the nature of the grounds makes fighting impracticable, we still have gone only halfway towards victory. Hence, the experienced soldier, once in motion, is never bewildered. Once he has broken camp, he is never at a loss. Hence the saying, if you know the enemy and know yourself, your victory will not stand in doubt. If you know heaven and know earth, you may make your victory complete. The 9 situations. Sun Tzu said, the art of war recognizes 9 varieties of ground. 1. Dispersive ground. 2. Facile ground. 3. Contentious ground. 4. Open ground. 5. Ground of intersecting highways. 6. Serious ground. 7. Difficult ground. 8. Hemmed in ground. 9. Desperate ground. When a chieftain is fighting in his own territory, it is dispersive ground. When he has penetrated into hostile territory, but to no great distance, it is facile ground. Ground, the possession of which imports great advantage to either side, is contentious ground. Ground on which either side has liberty of movement is open ground. Ground which forms the key to 3 contagious states, so that he who occupies it first has most of the empire at his command, is ground of intersecting highways. When an army has penetrated into the heart of a hostile country, leaving a number of fortified cities in its rear, it is serious ground. Mountain forest, rugged steeps, marshes, and fens, all country that is hard to traverse, this is difficult ground. Ground which is reached through narrow gorges, or from which we can only retire by tortuous paths so that a small number of the enemy would suffice to crush a large body of our men, this is hemmed in ground. Ground on which we can only be saved from destruction by fighting without delay is desperate ground. On dispersive ground, therefore, fight not. On facile ground, halt not. On contentious ground, attack not. On open ground, do not try to block the enemy's way. On the ground of intersecting highways, join hands with your allies. On serious ground, gather in plunder. In difficult ground, keep steadily on the march. On hemmed in ground, resort to stratagem. On desperate ground, fight. Those who are called skillful leaders of old knew how to drive a wedge between the enemy's front and rear to prevent cooperation between his large and small divisions, to hinder the good troops from rescuing the bad, the officers from rallying their men. When the enemy's men were united, they managed to keep them in disorder. When it was to their advantage, they made a forward move. When otherwise, they stopped still. If asked how to cope with a great host of the enemy in orderly array and on the point of marching to the attack, I should say, begin by seizing something which your opponent holds dear. Then he will be amenable to your will. Rapidity is the essence of war. Take advantage of the enemy's unreadiness. Make your way by unexpected routes and attack unguarded spots. The following are the principles to be observed by an invading force. The further you penetrate into a country, the greater will be the solidarity of your troops, and thus the defenders will not prevail against you. Make forays into fertile country in order to supply your army with food. Carefully study the well-being of your men and do not overtax them. Concentrate your energy and hoard your strength. Keep your army continually on the move and devise unfathomable plans. Throw your soldiers into positions whence there is no escape, and they will prefer death to flight. If they will face death, there is nothing that they may not achieve. Officers and men alike will put forth their uttermost strength. Soldiers, when in desperate straits, lose the sense of fear. If there is no place of refuge, they will stand firm. If they are in hostile country, they will show a stubborn front. If there is no help for it, they will fight hard. Thus, without wanting to be marshaled, the soldiers will be constantly on the qui vive without wanting to be asked. They will do your will without restrictions. They will be faithful without giving orders. They can be trusted. Prohibit the taking of omens and do away with superstitious doubts. Then, until death itself comes, no calamity need be feared. If our soldiers are not overburdened with money, it is not because they have a distaste for riches. If their lives are not unduly long, it is not because they are disinclined to longevity. On the day that they are ordered out to battle, your soldiers may weep, those setting up bedewing their garments, and those lying down letting the tears run down their cheeks. But let them once be brought to bay, and they will display the courage of a Chu or Kyo. The skillful tactician may be likened to the Shaojan. Now, the Shaojan is a snake that is found in the Cheong Mountains. Strike at its head, and you will be attacked by its tail. Strike at its tail, and you will be attacked by its head. Strike at its middle, and you will be attacked by the head and tail both. Asked if an army can be made to imitate the Shaojan, I should answer yes. For the men of Wu and the men of Yu are enemies. Yet if they are crossing a river in the same boat and are caught by a storm, they will come to each other's assistance just as the left hand helps the right. Hence, it is not enough to put one's trust in the tethering of horses and burying of chariot wheels in the ground. The principle on which to manage an army is to set up one standard of courage which all must reach. How to make the best of both strong and weak, that is a question involving the proper use of ground. Thus, the skillful general conducts his armies just as though he were leading a single man, willy-nilly by the hand. It is the business of a general to be quiet and thus ensure secrecy, upright and just, and thus maintain order. He must be able to mystify his officers and men by false reports and appearances, and thus keep them in total ignorance. By altering his arraignments and changing his plans, he keeps the enemy without definitive knowledge. By shifting his camp and taking circuitous routes, he prevents the enemy from anticipating his purpose. At the critical moment, the leader of an army acts like one who has climbed up a height and then kicks away the ladder behind him. He carries his men deep into hostile territory before he shows his hand. He burns his boats and breaks his cooking pots. Like a shepherd driving a flock of sheep, he drives his men this way and that, and nothing knows whither he is going. To muster his host and bring it into danger, this may be termed the business of the general. The different measures suited to the 9 varieties of ground, the expediency of aggressive or defensive tactics, and the fundamental laws of human nature, these are things that must most certainly be studied. When invading hostile territory, the general principle is that penetrating deeply brings cohesion. Penetrating by a short way means dispersion. When you leave your own country behind and take your army across neighborhood territory, you find yourself on critical ground. When there are means of communication on all 4 sides, the ground is one of intersecting highways. When you penetrate deeply into a country, it is serious ground. When you penetrate but a little way, it is facile ground. When you have the enemy's stronghold on your rear and narrow passes in front, it is hemmed in ground. When there is no place of refuge at all, it is desperate ground. Therefore, on dispersive ground, I would inspire my men with unity of purpose. On facile ground, I would see that there is close connection between all parts of my army. On contentious ground, I would hurry up my rear. On open ground, I would keep a vigilant eye on my defenses. On ground of intersecting highways, I would consolidate my alliances. On serious ground, I would try to ensure a continuous stream of supplies. On difficult ground, I would keep pushing on along the road. On hemmed-in ground, I would block any way of retreat. On desperate ground, I would proclaim to my soldiers the hopelessness of saving their lives. For it is the soldier's disposition to offer an obstinate resistance when surrounded, to fight hard when he cannot help himself, and to obey promptly when he has fallen into danger. We cannot enter into alliances with neighboring princes until we are acquainted with their designs. We are not fit to lead an army on the march unless we are familiar with the face of the country, its mountains and forests, its pitfalls and precipices, its marshes and swamps. We shall be unable to turn natural advantages to account unless we make use of local guides. To be ignored of any one of the following 4 or 5 principles does not befit a warlike prince. When a warlike prince attacks a powerful state, his generalship shows itself in preventing the concentration of the enemy's force. He overawes his opponents, and their allies are prevented from joining against him. Hence, he does not strive to ally himself with all and sundry, nor does he foster the power of other states. He carries out his own secret designs, keeping his antagonists in awe. Thus, he is able to capture their cities and overthrow their kingdoms. Bestow rewards without regard to rule, issue orders without regard to previous arraignments, and you will be able to handle a whole army as though you had to do but with a single man. Confront your soldiers with the deed itself. Never let them know your design. When the outlook is bright, bring it before their eyes, but tell them nothing when the situation is gloomy. Place your army in deadly peril, and it will survive. Plunge it into desperate straits, and it will come off in safety. For it is precisely when a force has fallen into harm's way that it is capable of striking a blow for victory. Success in warfare is gained by carefully accommodating ourselves to the enemy's purpose. By persistently hanging on the enemy's flank, we shall succeed in the long run in killing the commander in chief. This is called ability to accomplish a thing by sheer cunning. On the day that you take up your command, block the frontier passes, destroy the official tallies, and stop the passage of all emissaries. Be stern in the council chamber so that you may control the situation. If the enemy leaves a door open, you must rush in. Forestall your opponent by seizing what he holds dear and subtly contrive to time his arrival on the ground. Walk in the path defined by rule and accommodate yourself to the enemy until you can fight a decisive battle. At first, then, exhibit the coyness of a maiden until the enemy gives you an opening. Afterwards, emulate the rapidity of a running hare, and it will be too late for the enemy to oppose you. Attack by fire. Sun Tzu said, there are 5 ways of attacking with fire. The first is to burn soldiers in their camps. The second is to burn stores. The third is to burn baggage trains. The fourth is to burn arsenals and magazines. The fifth is to hurl dropping fire amongst the enemy. In order to carry out an attack, we must have means available. The material for raising fire should always be kept in readiness. There is proper season for making attacks with fire and special days for starting a conflagration. The proper season is when the weather is very dry. The special days are those when the moon is in the constellations of the Scythe, the Wall, the Wing, or the Crossbar, for these 4 are all days of rising wind. In attacking with fire, one should be prepared to meet 5 possible developments. 1. When fire breaks out inside the enemy's camp, respond at once with an attack from without. 2. If there is an outbreak of fire, but the enemy's soldiers remain quiet, bide your time and do not attack. 3. When the force of the flames has reached its height, follow it up with an attack if that is practical. If not, stay where you are. 4. If it is possible to make an assault with fire from without, do not wait for it to break out within, but deliver your attack at a favorable moment. 5. When you start a fire, be to windward of it. Do not attack from the leeward. A wind that rises in the daytime lasts long, but a night breeze soon falls. In every army, the 5 developments connected with fire must be known, the movements of the stars calculated, and a watch kept for the proper days. Hence, those who use fire as an aid to the attack show intelligence. Those who use water as an aid to the attack gain the ascension of strength. By means of water, an enemy may be intercepted, but not robbed of all his belongings. Unhappy is the fate of one who tries to win his battles and succeeds in his attacks without cultivating the spirit of enterprise, for the result is waste of time and general stagnation. Hence the saying, the enlightened ruler lays his plans well ahead, the good general cultivates his resources. Move not unless you see an advantage. Use not your troops unless there is something to be gained. Fight not unless the position is critical. No ruler should put troops into the field merely to gratify his own spleen. No general should fight a battle simply out of pique. If it is to your advantage, make a forward move. If not, stay where you are. Anger may in time change to gladness. Vexation may be succeeded by content. But a kingdom that has once been destroyed can never come again into being, nor can the dead ever be brought back to life. Hence, the enlightened ruler is heedful and the good general full of caution. This is the way to keep a country at peace and an army intact. The use of spies. Sun Tzu said, raising a host of 100,000 men and marching them great distances entails heavy loss on the people and a drain on the resources of the state. The daily expenditure will amount to 1,000 ounces of silver. There will be a commotion at home and abroad, and men will drop down exhausted on the highways. As many as 700,000 families will be impeded in their labor. Hostile armies may face each other for years, striving for the victory which is decided in a single day. This being so, to remain in ignorance of the enemy's conditions, simply because one grudges the outlay of 100 ounces of silver in honors and emoluments, is the height of inhumanity. One who acts thus is no leader of men, no present help to his sovereign, no master of victory. Thus, what enables the wise sovereign and the good general to strike and conquer and achieve things beyond the reach of ordinary men is foreknowledge. Now, this foreknowledge cannot be elicited from spirits. It cannot be obtained inductively from experience, nor by any deductive calculations. Knowledge of the enemy's dispositions can only be obtained from other men. Hence the use of spies, of whom there are 5 classes. 1. Local spies. 2. Inward spies. 3. Converted spies. 4. Doomed spies. 5. Surviving spies. When these 5 kinds of spies are all at work, none can discover the secret system. This is called divine manipulation of the threads. It is the sovereign's most precious faculty. Having local spies means employing the services of the inhabitants of a district. Having inward spies, making use of officials of the enemy. Having converted spies, getting a hold of the enemy's spies and using them for your own purposes. Having doomed spies, doing certain things openly for purposes of deception and allowing our spies to know of them and report them to the enemy. Surviving spies, finally, are those who bring back news from the enemy's camp. Hence it is that which none in the whole army are more intimate relations to be maintained than with spies. None should be more liberally rewarded, and no other business should greater secrecy be preserved. Spies cannot be usefully employed without a certain intuitive sagacity. They cannot be properly managed without benevolence and straightforwardness. Without subtle ingenuity of mind, one cannot make certain of the truths of their report. Be subtle, and use your spies for every kind of business. If a secret piece of news is divulged by a spy before the time is ripe, he must be put to death together with the man to whom the secret was told. Whether the object be to crush an army, to storm a city, or to assassinate an individual, it is always necessary to begin by finding out the names of the attendants, the aides de camp, and doorkeepers and sentries of the general in command. Our spies must be commissioned to ascertain these. The enemy's spies who have come to spy on us must be sought out, tempted with bribes, led away, and comfortably housed. Thus, they will become coveted spies and available for our service. It is through the information brought by the coveted spy that we are able to acquire and employ local and inward spies. It is owing to his information, again, that we can cause the doomed spy to carry false tidings to the enemy. Lastly, it is by his information that the surviving spy can be used on appointed occasions. The end and aim of spying in all these 5 varieties is knowledge of the enemy, and this knowledge can only be derived in the first instance from the converted spy. Hence, it is essential that the converted spy be treated with the utmost liberality. Of old, the rise of the Yin dynasty was due to the I who had served under the Hassa. Likewise, the rise of the Choi dynasty was due to the Luya who had served under the Yin. Hence, it is only the enlightened ruler and the wise general who will use the highest intelligence of the army for purposes of spying, and thereby they achieve the greatest results. Spies are a most important element as water, because on them depends an army's ability to move. The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Read by Phil K.O.E. of KOE Nation on YouTube and Twitch, dedicated to my daughter. And there we go, folks. That was my reading of The Art of War. I also attempted to put my kiddo down, but well, he's still up. He's with mom right now. I tried all of it, but none of it was working tonight. None of it was working tonight. Now, speaking of fatherhood and kiddos, this is something I've been wanting to play for a little while. I actually sent a voicemail in to a show that some of you may have heard of, Dad's Intergalactic, Dad's International, Dad's Intercontinental. Maybe you've heard of this show, but it's hosted by one Brendan Roy and now Tony G. Yes, Tony's cheating on me with another podcast, it turns out. But let's keep that Dad's logo there. Yep, there we go. But yeah, this was actually pretty good. So I sent some voicemails into Dads Worldwide, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, folks.
Well, Tony, we don't have much more time for banter. Do you know what that means?
Oh, I wondered if you were gonna steal that. I wondered. What are you talking about? The whole show is banter.
It totally is. All right, we have 5 voicemails.
Holy shit, 5.
5 voicemails. So
Wow. Let me preface this first with this has been a fucking challenge, okay? I have dropped literally play-by-play instructions to some folks. Phil, you go to a website, you click a button, you click another button, and then you click a button after you talk. Should be the simplest thing in the world. And begrudgingly, Phil either didn't understand it at first and then did and was too embarrassed to admit it, or just was too stupid to grasp the concept. I don't know. But kept sending voice messages on Facebook Messenger. I'm like, that's not how this works, Phil. That's not how this works. And literally the other day I said, I'm not making you any more thumbnails until you figure this out correctly. And then shockingly,
it happened.
Apparently he figured it out real fast. So
Well, I will tell you that Mr. Phil K.O.E. did figure it out, but he is not the number one voicemail. The first one. I haven't listened to any of these, so I'm gonna surprise you. Are you ready?
I couldn't be more ready.
Okay. And now they're not playing. Oh.
The hell was that? Jesus.
Right when I was going to hit record on something, my wife makes the weirdest fucking noise ever. I'm keeping this.
Oh my god, I almost
Was that it?
that was it. I almost I was like, oh my god, I guess I should have screened these.
No. I was very confused too.
So you know who that is. That's Skinnerd.
Skinnerd.
And he apparently his wife is making whale noises while we record. Oh, interesting. All right.
Wow.
Voicemail number 2, also from our friend Skinner.
What is up, gentlemen? This is Skinner, yo boy. Just calling to ask a question. Figured it's dad related and music related. What would you guys consider dad rock? Apparently, kids are now saying that Mudvayne and Static X and shit like that is considered dad rock now. I always thought like Bob Seger was dad rock to me, but I guess I'm showing my age. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, it's weird because I work with Actually, he literally just left for leave. A guy, he just turned 21 here not that long ago. He'll be going over to Syria for a year. But when I was working with him, and he was helping me out on my side, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, here I'll play my divorced dad rock playlist," and it'd be like fucking Creed, Nickelback, and like a lot of other bands in that realm that people don't actually hate, but like in that same vein. So yeah, I think it's just kind of by your age what you consider dad rock. If the person that was listening to that band in high school is now like 40ish, yeah, now it's probably dad rock.
Yeah, man, that's a tough one. It's so funny that my sons are now listening to the same rock music that I listened to in high school.
And they call it classic rock.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's brutal.
And then I realized how much I don't like most of that music now. So there's a local station who literally plays rock. Well, I guess it's oldies now, right? Like it's Motley Crue,
Yeah,
Poison.
that's like double classic now.
Yeah. So like all this stuff that with ballads and they play Metallica too, of course.
Right. Well, yeah.
A little Black Sabbath, Ozzy, all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the dad that you are, but dad rock, man, Ozzy has to be in there. AC/DC has to be in there.
Yeah.
Alika has to be in there.
I can't consider Static X and Mudvayne dad rock because that's still
That's to me, that's a little on the outskirts, even though I actually love those two bands.
yeah.
Like, I don't feel like that's dad rock necessarily.
No, I would say yeah, like Creed, Nickelback, that vein is more dad rockish, or I don't know, Puddle of Mud, like stuff like that. It was more like it because that's more like
Yeah.
I don't know, pure rock, radio rock. I don't know. Static X never was way more like metal rock. It's hard to explain because like I don't know. In high school, like I thought Wayne Static was like the coolest looking motherfucker ever. I tried to grow my hair, and do that. Yeah, I didn't do it because my hair's really
I would
thin.
rather listen to Slipknot than I would any of the other bands that I just
Yeah,
mentioned.
absolutely.
But am I going to listen to that with my kids? I take that back. I do listen to that when my kids are around. So,
yeah, if you play like Wait and Bleed or People Equal Shit, like yeah, I'm gonna fucking throw something and just damn. So I guess that's dad rock. Damn.
Damn it. I think it's whatever you want to listen to, and but I mean, if we're going oldies though, like I think. Yeah, like AC/DC, and that's when my kids started listening to. I threw a couple songs on there, but like AC/DC, Metallica. But one of my sons is trying to learn how to play guitar, and like AC/DC is like one of the first couple songs that he learned. So yeah, I mean, I think that's where the rock is for like if kids are looking for dad rock, like I think that's where it's at.
They're mislabeling. Yeah, no, I disagree that Mudvayne is dad rock, but yeah, I guess I can see the connection. It's just no, it just feels wrong.
All right, Skinner. I hope we answered the question appropriately.
Yeah.
Here we go. K.O.E. number 1.
I'm terrified.
Well, hello, you beautiful people.
Oh God.
Your King of Extreme, Phil K.O.E. You can, of course, find me at on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch.
I already regret this.
Folks, I, Phil K.O.E., the man of the hour, the man with the power, the man that podcast tower. I have but one question for you. Why?
About time.
International not feature more Phil K.O.E. you folks at Dad's Intercontinental even realize what you're being deprived of here? The Dad's Intergalactic podcast would be
Oh my god.
amazing KOE content, but no. The Dad's Here, There, and a Little Bit of Everywhere podcast denying you, folks. It's something that you should not ask for. Nay, nay.
He's still going.
He is still
Demand.
going.
KOE Nation, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, and hopefully Dad's Worldwide. We'll catch you on the flip side, folks.
That was one.
Oh, you got it right.
That was one message.
What was that? That was one message.
Oh fuck. Okay. Well, I can answer the question. I think I did a good job before we even played his message. Why does it not feature more Phil? Because he didn't understand how to click a button. That's why. That's why.
And folks, Phil's probably not even going to hear the answer to his questions
No.
unless we share it to him. But
No, we'll have to share the link with him and
Yeah.
give him a timestamp.
yeah, yeah. I wonder if he's going to introduce himself on every single voicemail.
That's exactly what I was thinking halfway through, and I went, "Oh no,
Phil, I love you, my friend. You are always welcome on the show. Always.
God."
Let's Tony. Tony will give you the wrong time though to show up.
Yeah.
Uh,
I do get plenty of doses of Phil KOE. I'm just putting
all right, number 2.
Oh boy, brace yourself.
Well, hello again,
Oh
everyone.
God.
It is once again Phil KOE of KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. That's
Yep.
King. Oh, my God, you can find KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. He is extremely happy to know you can find KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. I have a very simple question
Do
for
you?
the panel of Dad's Interdimensional. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck
Oh fuck.
if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Yes, we get to the very, very hard questions here at Dad's Multiversal. Yes, the Dad Multiverse now. Folks, I'm curious. I know you're curious. KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch
Oh God.
is definitely curious. Back to you, Dad's Interatomic.
What?
I don't know.
He had nothing to ask that time, but went, I just don't feel like I shilled hard enough the first time. What can I just say? How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? The answer, of course, being as much wood as a woodchuck could chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood.
I don't know what to say.
If anybody missed how you could find Phil KOE on the internet, I'm positive he's going to remind us in this third message.
I believe you're correct, sir. Here we go.
Well, howdy, all you
God.
beautiful denizens of the web out there. It is I, Phil KOE, with the KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and, of course, Twitter. That is, of course, KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. And I've got a serious question here for Tony G and Brendan Rowe, the Dad's Above and Below Sea Level podcast.
What?
What advice do you have for any new fathers or expecting fathers to be? Back to you, gentlemen.
Wow, a real question. Wow. He got there. It took 3 attempts, but he got there.
Oh my goodness.
New fathers and first time fathers. What advice do we have? That was his finally got there after an hour of messages. All right. And he is a newly christened father.
He is.
Yeah, just a baby boy here. What? God, it's been several months already.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's been a couple.
God. Lose track of time so quick. Good Lord. I think the first thing that comes to my mind was when I had my first, and I've mentioned this multiple times, that we had such an easy first pregnancy. It was like she felt amazing the whole time, didn't have any cravings, barely gained any weight. It was super easy, and it was like 2 pushes and he's out. It was just like the easiest thing in the world.
Jeez.
Problem was, for me, that freaked me the fuck out when he came out and they plop him on her chest, like, here he is. It was so sudden and quick, and then, oh God, that's my son. And then it dawned on me what I was looking at. He had such a gigantic long cone head. His head looked like an eggplant.
Melon.
And that's not hyperbole. My son's head was the size of a fucking summer squash and the same shape. Like, he looked like if you took and they put like the little stocking cap thing on him, he looked like his head was shaped like Alien, like from the movie Alien.
Oh,
Like, it was fucking terrifying. I was like, oh my God, what's wrong? My beautiful son is deformed. Like, no, it's fine.
you murdered my child.
What have you done to my boy? No, that goes away very quickly. It just depends like how they come out of the birthing canal, and because their heads are like basically Play-Doh, like their craniums are not like hard yet. That's why you've got to be very careful with a baby, and there's no protection there. Your skull is not formed, so it's like Jello. It like molds around. So no, don't be freaked out if your new child has a weird disfigured cone head at first. That's my best advice.
That's very good advice. So I did not get this advice, but I think it is probably the best advice is try to savor every moment.
That's solid.
Yeah, I think because and it's really hard. It's not an easy thing to do, but like when you've been up 10 hours.
Yeah, you're exhausted.
The baby's crying.
You're overstimulated.
You've changed them. You've changed yourself. And they just won't stop. And like, so sometimes it's even in that moment, I think you need to savor it, and you need to, and I know what I'm saying, and I understand how really difficult it is, but then like all of a sudden 10 years goes by and a 10-year-old, and it's a different. So yeah, I mean, you're really, I never got this advice. I think someone gave this to Jim, and when Jim mentioned it on the podcast, I think I was like blown away by this, and I think that's what I remember as like the best advice to give any new fathers. Just savor absolutely every moment you absolutely can, because man, it really does go quick.
Yeah, it's you blink and they're already at another step. It's every little thing, and you don't even notice what went away and replaced it. Like you're like, oh, they did this new thing, and you don't realize what's been replaced already.
Yeah.
And especially when they start talking, and you start going from the dad or the dad to the daddy to the dad to the bruh. It's like it's so fast, but it's true. And you like doom scroll on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram Reels or whatever. It was a clip from, what was that, Modern Family, Al Bundy, whatever, Leslie.
Ed O'Neill.
Yeah, Ed O'Neill, not Ed Leslie. Jesus, close enough. It was a clip of him, and he's like giving a speech at like a birthday or something off that show, and
yeah,
it's like he was talking about how you have these kids, you have these little kids, and everything they do is so amazing, and then all of a sudden, the next morning you wake up and there's this whole different kid there, and you don't have a chance to miss the one it replaced, because now instead of this baby, you've got this toddler. And then this toddler turns into just a wonderful little person, and then this person turns into a teenager, and blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. And then they all leave at once. because you never had a chance to grieve the loss of the other one because a new one replaced it, but then all of them leave at once.
Yeah.
And then they're gone, and you barely see them anymore. And you're like, oh man. So yeah, if you don't cherish the moment and really, let yourself soak that in, it's a blink and you'll miss it. So take as many pictures and videos as you can and indulge in the silliness and the stupidity of whatever your kid's doing, and look at the stupid art thing that they made out of fucking rocks and pine cones that's definitely going to get thrown away immediately, but at least appreciate it. Try to hold on to it, because it's so quick. Those little things, they're gone so fast, and they stop doing those things. Like my kids would, whenever my wife would go to work or have to work on the weekends, they'd follow her out to the car and they'd pick freaking weeds or dandelions out of the yard and like give these to her as she's trying to back out. And you're like, oh, and they haven't done that for a long time, and it's one of those things. She's like, I know I've got to cherish this. Like, I'm trying to get to work, but like, if I don't enjoy this now, they're not going to do it again.
Be done.
Yeah, it's done. So it's and it happens fast. It's crazy how fast it happens, but yeah, soak it in.
Tell her to shut the hell up and just let dad do his thing. He's trying to back fucking snowbound driveway.
Damn right. Let him do his fucking thing, Mom.
Let him do his fucking thing.
Yeah, oh god, our kids are so much like us. It's unreal.
It's ridiculous.
Like my oldest is a carbon copy of my wife. It's ridiculous because the stupid facial expressions he gives me when he knows he's being annoying, because it's hilarious. Just fucking identical to my wife. It's the same stupid humor. They are the same person. I call him Lindsay Jr. Like, it's just
that he just loves that.
He thinks it's hilarious. She loves it.
My 12-year-old calls his brother bro.
Well,
since,
at least that's mostly accurate.
Yeah, I mean, at least he's not doing it to me, but
yeah,
it's still really annoying. So.
And there we have it, folks. And there, I'm back. All right. Now, folks, we're at that time of the evening where, as I'm known to say around here, all that being said, thank you for joining us this evening on the K.O.E. Nation. And I'm going to leave you with two things tonight. First, a little bit of scripture. 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. All scriptures breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be complete, equipped for every good work. God bless every last one of you. I hope all of you make it back here to the K.O.E. Nation happy, healthy, much the wiser. And I am going to leave you with the Athanasian Creed with full text, something I put together that I'm very happy with. So without further ado, well, folks, let's just get right into it. And God bless all y'all. Travel well. The Athanasian Creed. Whoever desires to be saved should above all hold to the universal faith. Anyone who does not keep it whole and unbroken will doubtless perish eternally. Now this is the universal faith, that we worship one God in Trinity and the Trinity in unity, neither blending their persons nor dividing their essence. For the person of the Father is a distinct person, the person of the Son is another, and that of the Holy Spirit still another. But the divinity of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is one, their glory equal, their majesty co-eternal. What quality the Father has, the Son has, and the Holy Spirit has. The Father is uncreated, the Son is uncreated, the Holy Spirit is uncreated. The Father is immeasurable, the Son is immeasurable, the Holy Spirit is immeasurable. The Father is eternal, the Son is eternal, the Holy Spirit is eternal. And yet there are not three eternal beings. There is but one eternal being. So too, there are not three uncreated or immeasurable things. There is but one uncreated and immeasurable being. Similarly, the Father is almighty, the Son is almighty, the Holy Spirit is almighty. Yet there are not three almighty beings. There is but one almighty being. Thus the Father is God, the Son is God, the Holy Spirit is God. Yet there are not three gods. There is but one God. Thus the Father is Lord, the Son is Lord, the Holy Spirit is Lord. Yet there are not three Lords. There is but one Lord. Just as Christian truth compels us to confess each person individually as both God and Lord, so universal religion forbids us to say there are three gods or lords. The Father was neither made nor created nor begotten from anyone. The Son was neither made nor created. He was begotten from the Father alone. The Holy Spirit was neither made nor created nor begotten. He proceeds from the Father and the Son. Accordingly, there is one Father, not three fathers. There is one Son, not three sons. There is one Holy Spirit, not three Holy Spirits. Nothing in this Trinity is before or after. Nothing is greater or smaller in their eternity. The three persons are co-eternal and co-equal with each other. So in everything, as was said earlier, we must worship their Trinity in their unity and their unity in their Trinity. Anyone then who desires to be saved should think thus about the Trinity. But it is necessary for eternal salvation that one also believes in the incarnation of our Lord Jesus Christ faithfully. Now this is the true faith, that we believe and confess that our Lord Jesus Christ, God's Son, is both God and human equally. He is God from the essence of the Father, begotten before time, and he is human from the essence of his mother, born in time, completely God, completely human, with a rational soul and human flesh, equal to the Father as regards divinity, less than the Father as regards humanity. Although he is God and human, yet Christ is not two, but one. He is one, however, but not by his divinity being turned into flesh, but by God's taking humanity to himself. He is one, certainly not by the blending of his essence, but by the unity of his person. For just as one human is both rational soul and flesh, so too the one Christ is both God and human. He suffered for our salvation. He descended to hell. He arose from the dead. He ascended to heaven. He is seated at the Father's right hand. From there he will come to judge the living and the dead. At his coming, all people will arise bodily and give an accounting of their own deeds. Those who have done good will enter eternal life. Those who have done evil will enter eternal fire. This is the universal faith. One cannot be saved without believing it firmly and faithfully. Amen.